Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the Environment Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Waverley Borough Council, 29th of January 2016. We've started half an hour early. That's because we've got the waste contract review to be reported to us, and a large amount of that is going to be an exempt session. So as a warning for people, if they're tuned in already, we will be stopping the webcast for possibly half an hour or more, up until perhaps just after 7 o'clock to cover that item, so please be patient with us, but it is necessary for us to go into exempt session, I'm afraid. The minutes of the meeting, item 1. The minutes of the last meeting. Members, do you confirm those as an accurate record of the meeting?
Agreed.
Thank you, I'll sign those later if necessary. Apologies for absence and substitutions. Fiona?
No apologies this evening, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Declarations of interests. Fiona?
None received before the meeting.
Thank you very much. Any declarations of interest that you've just thought of, members? No? Okay, thank you very much. Questions by members of the public. Any received?
No, Chairman.
Thank you very much. And on to item 5, beginning of the main business. Procurement approach for provision of waste recycling, street cleaning and grounds maintenance services. Report of the member, task and finish group. Councillor Nick Williams, you and your team have put in a lot of work. Would you please give us a brief introduction, bearing in mind that you're in open session, so there's lots of things you can't mention.
All I just will be extremely brief. You've already seen the forward in the in our scrutiny review. I'd just like to add only a very few points to that. First of all, I would like to thank the officers and Fiona for dealing with the report, and I think when you've all had an opportunity of considering it, you will accept it is a very good report. I've got a few points to highlight. One, and this is from all of us, our priority was to continue with the high standards of waste collection in Waverley, and that we were not prepared to see that compromised in any way. We obviously appreciate the various budget constraints we have. You will also see from Appendix 1 the situation with Surrey, but I understand from officers that there are ongoing discussions, and hopefully those will be successful. Obviously we've considered savings which are set out as best we can. Some we haven't got the information on yet. You'll also see that there are time constraints to consider, and as I said a moment ago, we haven't got all the costings for the possible joint waste matters. However, we can proceed to stage 2 of that without incurring extra cost, and that is clearly set out in the report. Finally, we've agreed in general terms that if there are or will be questions, how we will divide them up together. And I understand that we will start off with the officers going through the report, and obviously when questions arise, I think it's hands up time, unless we want to do it in any other way, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we did discuss at our pre-meeting whether we could perhaps give a little bit more background to this, just for the benefit of the public who are watching, and I did agree that I would tempt everybody by reading out some of our pink pages, because I'm allowed to, apparently. Page 18 of your pink pages gives a bit of background here, paragraph 4.4, and the bullet points there, for the benefit of the public, tell us that Waverley is the 5th highest performing waste collection authority in England. That's out of 228. for dry recycling at 34.1%. Only South Oxfordshire and Surrey Heath achieve higher levels of diversion amongst its nearest neighbours and Surrey authority groups. The total curbside residual waste collected is well below the average in Surrey, demonstrating Waverley's waste reduction policies. That's our no excess residual waste and lid closed policy, which we try to enforce, and it demonstrates that that's having a positive effect, I think. Compared with our nearest neighbours, Waverley has the 4th highest yield in kilograms per household per year for curbside dry recycling, and the 5th lowest yield for curbside residual waste. Very good figures. This demonstrates that residents use the recycling scheme well and are keeping the volume of residual waste consistently low. Furthermore, Waverley collected less compostable waste than any other comparator authorities in 2015-16. Its composting rate is 20.8%, which is just above the average performance in England. But of course we are a rural borough, so a lot of people will compost themselves in Waverley. However, more recently Waverley has increased the number of garden waste subscriptions and carried out extensive promotion of the food waste service, increasing tonnages significantly. It's therefore likely that Waverley will perform better than average when more recent data is available. And Waverley's overall recycling and composting rate was 54.9% in 2015-16 and has increased to around 57% and even higher now, I think, due to the improvement. So we're doing very well. That's the background to this report. I think we are going to ask that Annie Wrighton, the Strategic Director, and Kelvin Mills, the Head of Communities and Major Projects, take the committee through the detailed conclusions and recommendations that are on our pink papers. I second your proposal and put to the committee the recommendation as set out in item 12 of the agenda that the committee goes into exempt session due to prevent disclosure to the public of exempt information as defined by paragraph 3 of section 100I of the Local Government Act 1972. That is, information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information, and I do recommend that you agree that we do go into exempt because this information shouldn't be in the public domain. It's in respect of tendering and contracts. So can I ask the committee firstly whether they wish to go into exempt, whether they agree to go into exempt? Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Can I ask Fiona to stop the webcast? Thank you.
Don't jump. Don't jump. Thank you. Yeah, sure.
Okay, I did indicate that I would make some noise, but have you just filled my glass up? For the sake of the Farnham Herald, if Daniel or B feel like they're going to need some noise to tell them that we're back in here, we might be in the kitchen cooking or something, and waiting to hear some noise from the webcast. Perhaps they're not that keen anyway, but it might help. I did say I would. Okay. Item 5 has been concluded in exempt session. The recommendations agreed are in exempt, and we will move on now to item 6 on our agenda, the medium-term financial plan 2018-19, 2020-21, and general fund budget 2018-19 on pages 17 to 62 of your larger bundle of papers. Can I please invite Graham Clark in Peter's absence, Graham Clark to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, this year we're running exactly the same report through to all 4 OVM scrutiny committees, and that's the same report that's also going to the executive on the 6th of February. So all committees have the same report for the general fund. So, Chairman, I'll just pull out some of the headlines in the report. And then the task of the committee is to pass any comments, observations on the budget proposals to the executive for its meeting on the 6th. and that's ahead of the full council meeting setting the budget and council tax levels and capital programmes on the 20th of February. So Chairman, just a bit of background. Last July we came up to Council with a revised medium-term financial plan which showed that we had a £2.7 million gap on our budget, caused mainly mainly by inflation and also a negative subsidy from the government, negative grants, which I'll touch on in a second. And also, we touched on it in the previous item actually, the reduced funding from Surrey County Council towards waste and recycling. They were the three main elements. And in September and October last year, Peter Vickers and myself ran some sessions for all members just to go through the detail of the financial plan. So where we are at the moment, we've revised the projections for the next 3 years, and we are at a shortfall of 3.2 million, with 0.8 million falling in the year 18-19, and all of that set out in Annex 2. On the new homes bonus, this is something that we've talked about before. In paragraph 5 and 6, I put a bit of commentary around that. New homes bonus still exists, and this is where the government give funding to local authorities where there is a net gain in the number of dwellings in their borough. They did scale back their proposals last year, whereby they introduced a sort of a minimum threshold and also reduced the legacy payments from 6 years to 4 years. So we did experience a drop-off in the amount of new homes bonus funding that we're getting. But the point as far as Waverley's financial plan is concerned is we have this prudent policy of not relying on new homes bonus to balance our budget. Therefore, whilst it still impacts on our ability to reinvest that money in capital schemes and generate revenue, it doesn't directly affect our ability to balance our revenue budget because we don't rely on it. Now, many authorities do rely on it, and they're having to cope with their scaling back. So it's proven it's been a good policy for a number of years now since new homes bonus came in, not to rely on it to balance off. Paragraph 4, just touch on the local government finance settlement. So Waverley has no grant now, so we're completely grant free. And then further down in the report, I touch on the negative grant that the government want to bring in paragraph 14 of 800,000. Now we have been making our views about that known to government, and in the Chancellor's budget in November, the Chancellor announced that he has got some sympathy with councils that are facing that in their medium-term financial plans, and a large number of them are Surrey authorities and certainly South East authorities actually, and this is all part of the government's need to redistribute resources around the country. So, Waverley, part of Surrey and Hampshire and some of the other areas around here are experiencing a negative grant. So the Chancellor said he'll look at that in the spring and open up a consultation to look at the impact. So we will do all we can there to make the necessary representations. So in terms... Sorry, I'm competing with a dog outside now. So.
I think you can win that one.
Good, I hope so. So a couple of things to note. Fees and charges, paragraph 7. There's a schedule of fees and charges that's in Annex 3. They're up for any discussion and comment, feeding through to the executive. The staff pay award, paragraph 9, has been agreed, but it is subject to final council approval. So that is included in the report. And then the main part of this report is Annex 2, which sets out the projections for the next 3 years as revised, and also all of the proposals that have come about from the heads of service work with their portfolio holders to balance the budget in 18-19. And so the main points, the main elements of the addressing that has been a negotiation of transitional relief in Surrey County Council's waste funding reduction. Richard Homewood and the team managed to work with Surrey County's officers to get some transitional relief there, so that took a bit of pressure off of the early years, but nevertheless it's still, over the 3-year period, results in some £550,000 less than we currently receive. We've also been successful in Waverley's property strategy, which is to acquire new properties, and we've acquired 4 within the borough over the last 12 months, and they are all generating a good level of income for us, so that's helped the budget position. There's a proposal in here to increase council tax by the maximum that the government will allow us to, which is 2.99% for next year, which is just short of CPI inflation. And there are also some other measures that are all listed down in the left-hand column on Annex 2, that again are for members to consider and pass any comments to the executive. And some of those are growth items as well, where portfolio holders and the heads of service wish to actually put some more money into some services and facilities, and we'll look at those in a second. So we do have a strategy for addressing the shortfall, and as paragraph 16 says, we've got targets in place for the following 2 years, so 19, 20 and 2021. Targets in place to achieve on all of the main elements of the strategy, so property, income, efficiency, and also procurement as well. So that was what we agreed last year would be our strategy, alongside having a council tax increase. So that's how we intend to address the shortfall going forward. As far as council tax is concerned, I mentioned the 2.99%, just a couple of other things on council tax, paragraph 31. Also in the Chancellor's budget, the government announced that it would allow councils to increase the premium on council tax that they charge to the owners of long-term empty properties, and they're properties that have been empty for more than 2 years, from 50% extra council tax to 100% extra. So in other words, there's a double charge. Now, I'm proposing in here that Waverley should implement that, because that incentivises owners to bring those homes back into use. Again, something that portfolio holder supports, but it's up for members to pass comment to the executive if you support or feel that you don't support that. And finally, on council tax, para 33, the council tax support scheme, which a few years ago replaced council tax benefit and is now a locally set scheme by Waverley, I'm suggesting that we keep that exactly the same going into next year. It's working well. It's supporting around 4,000 households that have got low income and not much capital, and we are finding that that's working, and there's no reason to change that. But again, that's up for members to comment on. Then finally, Chairman, there's a capital programme for general fund schemes set out in Annex 5, where the heads of service again have worked with portfolio holders to come up with proposals to spend on things like IT and our parks and open spaces. So all of that's up for consideration and comment this evening, Chairman. So I'll leave it at that. And I've got Rosie with me, one of our senior accountants, who will happily take all the questions.
He's mean, isn't he? Right. Thank you very much indeed, Graham. Now, I think the easiest way to run through this is to turn you to page 24 and 25 of your papers, which is what the executive's going to be looking at. You'll see on page 25 the recommendation there is for us, the Review and Scrutiny Committee, to consider the proposals and pass observations to the executive, and do the same, look at the draft capital programme and fees and put them forward. But in detail, we've got 11 points here under paragraph 38, which covers, I think, just about anything that you might wish to bring up. And if we run through them and see if anybody wants to speak on each of them, we'll do the end in no time. Now, I'm hoping so, because I think Value for Money spent well over an hour on this last week, looking at a lot of the things, and we don't need to duplicate what they've done, people. I hope you agree. We do need to look at issues which are to do with the environment. That's our remit. And I certainly wouldn't wish to stop anybody from looking at the large overarching issues because otherwise you're going to have to turn up at the exec to shout at your colleagues next Tuesday. So if you want to get a message to them through here, through a recommendation, if the rest of us agree, I'm sure Councillor Bolton would be happy to pass forward our comments. So listen. No, if I can take you firstly to number one, which is the 2.99% increase in Waverley's element of council tax. Does anyone else want to play devil's advocate on that one? The residents who particularly don't want to pay more? Anybody here, apart from myself, think that there might be another option? We're all happy.
Chairman, it's worth me saying that's about £5.14 on a band D a year for Waverley's element council.
I do appreciate that 3% for Waverley, when you compare it to Surrey, is not going to make a massive difference to and the police precept as well, isn't going to be a 3% increase in the overall amount that people pay. I think most people understand that. But the issue really is that why not 0%, 1% or 2%? I mean, I think residents will be incredibly impressed if we were to turn around and reduce our council tax because other prices go down. Waverley is one of those worlds where things never go down, and it's a rather artificial world, isn't it? Prices have to go up forever, and we rely upon that. But so really, I mean, obviously we need as much money as possible. If we don't put it up this year, we lose that next year, and we lose it the year after.
But you didn't show your baseline, so...
But similarly, we're making the residents, us, and the people we represent, the people we're doing this for, making them pay over and over and over. That money that we want over and over and over, we're making them pay, and we're doing this for them. You know, what do the residents want? They don't want us to sit here and meekly turn around and say, yeah, I'll put it up the maximum we can, every time we're asked. We should be here scrutinising it. We should be asking, I'd particularly like to ask, really, what... have we had scenarios in front of members of the executive or whatever of what we would have to do in order to produce a 0%, 1% or 2% instead of 3%? Because I understand it's 280,000 or something like that for 3%. So a £95,000 saving somewhere. Now you've got to bear in mind the public see us throwing away 3 million on the Gostre Centre and not throwing away, but spending an awful lot of money left, right and centre. And if we were to save 90,000 somewhere, then we can make this 2%, save another 90,000. But again, it's got to be sustainable. So, members, your thoughts on that, Peter?
You say everything's going up. Council house rents are going down by 1%. I don't know what the number is. I would ask our accountants to give me an exact number, please.
Thank you. Can we leave that till tomorrow? Because that's it, the housing issue and the HRA is actually on the Housing Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting tomorrow. And I take your point. I didn't actually say that. I'm saying the rest of the world things do go down, and you're quite right that the government imposes a 4%, 4-year, 1% per annum. I think Graham will confirm. But that was because they want to keep welfare costs down. It's a different kettle of fish. But you're correct. Yes.
Could I have an answer to my question, please, from the accountants?
Chairman, can I just clarify the question? What are you after, Councillor Rich, with the cost of minus 1%
yes,
rent?
Indeed.
Okay, so to the individual tenant, it would clearly depend on what their rent was and whether they receive housing benefit. But I mean, but overall, it's 1% of a rent roll of about £30 million. That's what 1% is. Okay, so about 300,000.
Yeah, I think rent currently is about 29 million. So it will be.
So that's not actually in our papers in front of us, and that's for tomorrow night. Really.
It isn't.
So, but you know, again, it's a high level if that's a big issue to you. But we don't have a choice with that, Councillor, I'm afraid. That's the government which has imposed it. I think it's was a good move, but I would think that.
Chairman, clearly we've observed there that we've got apparently an increase in general council tax, which is almost equal to the decrease in rents, but of course they're different budgets. What we've got here is a really good set of recommendations. This is not a difficult but an easy activity, as I've got personal experience of. For a large number of years, Waverley had nil increase in its council tax element. And then we started to realise that we were going to suffer because we hadn't kept up Personally, I think Waverley does a really good job of the things that it's doing and has a lot of satisfied residents. I think generally though residents would like us to see a bit more being done, a bit more being spent on the day centres, a bit more being done in place shaping of our towns and locations. But if we were to go for an increase greater than 2.99, we'd have to go to a referendum and all sorts of issues. So it's a bit of a glass ceiling, that level we can go to. That we are going to it this year has my full support. Thank you, Chair.
Mary.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. In an ideal world, it would be nice to see that figure was lower, but unfortunately, it's perhaps necessary in many ways, and I agree with Wyatt here, is that I remember being part of this council when it was proposed that we had no increase, but at some point you pay for that along the way, so instead of having no, next year you have 5% to make up for all the years you didn't put it up, so I think it's prudent that we move forward with changes. But I just want to give you one feel-good story here that comes out of this that shows that we're not penalising the taxpayer in all of this. On page 29, if you look at Stockshall Field car park management, we are going into a partnership with Waverley Borough Council to use one of our assets to generate money for us. Now, the difficult challenges we face there is either put the precept up to pay for some of the demands that's on us locally, or start charging for a service that currently is used by a specific group of people. So the choice was simple. Don't put the precept up for everybody who's not going to use it. Actually put the charge on the facility for those who are going to use it. And we're in Cranley's in a very fortunate position that it can actually manage its charging policy different. So here we've seen a good creative way of thinking of how we can not put up the precept locally, but still get those who use the services to pay for them without everybody paying for it who don't use it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And you're absolutely right. We'll cover that at points, I think, because it's 4 and 5, actually, we'll be referring to Annex 2. So,
yes,
Councillor James.
a question again, because everything is always new to me like this. On the capital programme, Annex 5, can you explain the disabled facility grant was for 600,000, then it has 600,000 as external funding, so presumably then Waverley aren't paying the 600. So why does it have to even be there?
Sorry, can I answer?
Sorry, yes, I mean, just, so otherwise I'd like to know.
So the 600,000 is funded by Better Care Fund, which is provided through Surrey, but originally from central government. We need to propose that budget, and then it is fully funded by the Better Care Fund. So that 600,000 moves straight across into our budget, but it is fully funded, like you say, by that Better Care Fund. So Waverley incurs no cost on that project. It is actually a project that's underway now.
Okay.
As well, it's been for a number of years.
So we can come back to that if you like when we get down to that point at point 10, because that's when we'll be looking at Annex 5. But so Councillor Byam, are you on the council tax issue?
I wanted to support Wyatt input. In fact, I was going to make the point, and you got in before me, about we went for 6 years without putting our council tax up. The majority of other, I think, people in councils in Surrey did the same.
Was that not government policy from your government in 2010? Was that not the case? Didn't the government put a limit on?
Well, there's a limit on now, and so they've had a limit all the way through, but there was never a limit of
There's
zero.
some reason why we shouldn't. We'd have to be, were we not penalised, were councils not penalised if they put it up when those penalties have been removed, something like that? Is that the case?
There used to be capping in place, and where legally you couldn't go beyond that. And then they changed capping, the government changed capping to a referendum principle, which means that a council can set its council tax at any level it likes, but if you're above the threshold that the government set each year, you are forced to have a referendum, so that basically you ask for endorsement from your residents to the above threshold increase, and so that's what's in place now. So yes, there's always been a control in place, but it's just changed in its appearance.
Beyond that point, I know that, well, I don't know what the figures are for county council, but I believe they're allowed to put an extra amount up for social care, we get involved quite a lot in an element of social care, yet the money, I presume, is not going up for that reason. Should we not be asking for actually more money to actually provide better social care? We are getting people who are going into bed and breakfast because they can't afford their rent or whatever. That comes under our costs, I think, to a degree, and therefore we're actually short of money. It's depleting rather than increasing by the 2.9%.
But yes, but obviously, as Deborah said, because I think the residents would argue that there are other areas that we can save money. That's the point. Whether we started looking at staffing levels, whether we were looking at non-discretionary
providing a poorer service by reducing
no, not necessarily. I mean, that doesn't have to follow. Businesses make cuts and improve their business. Businesses change. They change their culture. They change their way of thinking. They change what they do, and they can provide a better service for less money. They have to when times are lean. Councils aren't in the same market. We don't have the same good, but it's. I understand that.
With respect, Mr. Chairman, the council is doing changes and things that are different. Look at the very investment portfolio activity that's brought in. I think it's an extra £250 or £270,000 in to compensate for the reductions, and it's forecast to increase over the coming years. Something your colleagues have tried to argue we shouldn't do. Please don't get at this group about the fact that things aren't changing. We're driving change, and this group is scrutinising some of it.
And looking at staff levels, we debate earnestly when we want to employ staff, and we think diligently, and I think the staff do a wonderful job. I don't think we can reduce staff anymore, because mainly the workload you put on the staff.
Absolutely. Well, we are a scrutiny committee, and we are meant to be able to look at both sides of the story on behalf of the residents who we are meant to be representing.
If I may say,
and that's what we are trying to do.
I think speaking about staff matters in front of the staff is a bit inconsiderate.
Not at all. I mean, we were with Tom Horwood when these things were being discussed last week, and it was on the papers in front of us, and we're allowed to talk. I mean, nothing is beyond what we really shouldn't have things that we can't question or ask.
It's not about that, Chair. It's about being sensitive to the staff.
Well, I thought it was about being doing the job of scrutiny. We've got a very important job. It's a multi-million-pound budget. But Graham, you'd like to say something?
Chairman, not talking about staff, but just a couple of points. One thing that's perhaps we don't bring out in here, and that is that Waverley spends over £800,000 on its community organisation partners, so day centres and citizen advice, etc. There's no proposal in here to reduce any of that. So, despite the reduction, the proposal in the budget is to keep that at the same level. The other point, just coming back to the discussion around, where residents feel in terms of spending priorities. On page 29, the third line up from the bottom, there's a proposal in here to actually spend some money next year on undertaking some budget-based community engagement exercise. We did it a few years ago, and it was very interesting. It's a sort of exercise. You bring in members of the community, you do stuff online as well, and you ask a series of questions along the line of the debate just now, actually, about council tax increase versus reductions in service, and you map out a whole range of scenarios, and ask members of the public, your residents, to sort of almost play a trade-off game with what would you rather have, more of this, more of that, but you have financial constraints. And so there's some really good information that can come out of that sort of exercise, and that's what we're proposing to undertake next year.
So we can't talk about it here, but we're going to be able to talk about it next year, later on in the year.
Well, no,
I'm kidding.
I think it actually supports what members are saying now, so I think it's heading in the right direction.
Obviously, we have been asked actually as a committee if we would, as all over the scrutiny committees, we were asked if we can find any savings, and we're going to be going through a couple of the documents just to see, because there are some stars against some in one of the later annexes. I understand that we might wish to comment upon, we're being asked to. But I'm not sure, I think I asked this last Monday, but I'm not sure what the answer was. We used to have a detailed budget book. I'm just thinking that as a committee, how can we go through and look at the details of where we might be able to identify savings in the environment proposals for the coming year. We used to have a budget book, and it had the justification for the capital project justification, it was called, or something? And there were lots and lots of sheets, and I don't want them in front of me here, but I want to be able to access them if possible.
So Chairman, this is the budget book for the current year. It's all of that lot.
That's last year's.
Yeah, that's all on the website.
This
But,
year's.
I mean, the current year's, yeah, that's this year's, and obviously we've got to get the balance right between too much information and enough to make decisions. But at last Monday's committee, some members said, I want to dive a bit deeper into some of these areas, and so we're providing extra analysis. And there's always the opportunity of coming in and sitting down with the officers if members have got a particular area they want to get into. Because behind the Annex 1 summary is that budget book that you're talking about, Chairman. So if any members want to get into that in more detail before the council meeting, well, of course, we'll provide that and some discussion around it as well, if you wish. But it was a question of not inundating initially, but all the details sat there behind that summary.
Excellent. And will that be produced and available online, presumably, not on paper, I hope,
Well,
before the council meeting, or will we not have a budget book like that this year?
No, we weren't going to produce it before the council meeting. Well, not produce it and publish it before the council meeting because it won't be a decision. But it is sat there, and generally we find members want to focus in on a particular area rather than receive 100 pages of numbers. So.
Okay. Sorry, Wyatt, I want to move on, but do.
Well, just quickly to remind you that we've already established an activity to start to scrutinise the service plans and the budgets, looking for redundant activity in the environment area as an action that was set up at ONS, I think 3 months ago.
We've got service plans in a minute, yes.
Well, no, it's not those service plans, it's the detail that's behind those that, and Councillor Williams has agreed to work with me on that in 3 areas of environment that at the moment haven't been scrutinised recently. We're hoping to get into that next month. It'll probably go out of sync with the budget, but our plan was that rather than dive around skating thinly over everything, we try and go deep on some areas and try and cover everything over, say, a 3 or 4 year period. And I'm glad to see Graham's nodding.
Yeah, that's exactly what was agreed, Chairman, at the two meetings ago, I think, and that's a working group that you set up. But, and the budget isn't just about next year, of course. As Councillor Ramsdale said, it is this is about 3 years, but it's about beyond that as well. So any work we can do with members through that working group, is very welcome.
Thank you very much. Okay, I know we've got some other speakers, but what I want to, if we can please move on from 1 to 2. We're going to, I think, agree that the majority on this committee are happy with the to recommend to the executive to push forward with the 2.99% increase. I'm simply questioning whether other scenarios have been fully considered, which is what the residents would wish to ask, I think. And I'm not entirely sure of that, but perhaps I'll ask of the executive next week. Number 2, sorry, Peter, did you want to say something before we move on?
Yeah, I just wanted to come back on your comment on staffing. I think we've cut and cut and cut. We are lean and mean. We used to have a chief executive, 8 directors, 21 managers. We have now got 3 directors. And how many of our staff leave this office at 5 o'clock at night? I'm sorry, I've got the greatest admiration for them. Really.
Thank you. We are doing the budget here.
Yes, I know, but you made a comment about cutting.
No, I'm looking at all the options, and that has to be in any business is an option. But I take your point, and I understand that you don't want to discuss that. But if we move on to number 2, this is a very simple one. We're asking
have we all agreed, number 1?
I think everybody's made it clear
Yes,
that
we
they're
have.
happy for the executive to take that forward.
we have agreed.
Number 2 is to agree Waverley's council tax premium for long-term empty properties increased from 50%, as Graham told us, to 100% at the
Agreed,
earliest
definitely.
opportunity when the government allows.
Definitely.
Everybody, any
Agreed.
objections? No. Number 3 is agreed to make no change to the existing council tax support scheme. That's an easy one, I think. Again, I'm happy with that. Everybody happy?
Agreed.
Number 4, this is now turning to page 29. This is the meat of it, so if we could quickly go to 29. I know it's been raised very briefly. What we're being asked is, what they're going to do is implement the income and cost saving proposals as shown at Annex 2, including any staffing changes. And if you look down there, we've got planning and environment sort of halfway and 3/4 of the way down. You'll notice that we've got the increase in planning fees has been reflected in certain measures being taken to improve planning services. I don't know whether anyone here wants to, would you like to comment on
Well,
that?
Chairman, only to say that the line that says increase in statutory planning fees, that relates to the government allowed us to, as long as you spend all of the extra revenue on improving the service, and every planning authority in the country has taken that up, apparently. And so the starred items that sit below it add up to £240,000. So that is Elizabeth's proposals to spend that 240. So in the overall setting of next year's budget, all of those things just cancel each other out. But they need to go on here because they need a decision, and they will be part of the budget.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any comments on there? You notice we've got the end of car park check-in, check-out trial in Village Way in Cranley. That pilot's been live for 9 months, and we're going to return to the pay and display system. Is there any other comment? Would you like to comment on that?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I did have a mark against it there. I was just wondering why it didn't work. You know, what was it about that scheme that could have been very beneficial, especially to the shopper who just went in and wanted to get a newspaper out? Have we got any evidence to say why it didn't work?
Is there a brief answer, or do we take that to
No,
another
there is,
meeting?
Chair. I mean, so if Richard here, he would give you all that detail. And he has been working with the Cranley Chambers on this, of course, who in partnership with us set that up. It hasn't worked for them, and they've suggested and fully endorsed us not doing it, and actually a lot of people got caught out because they forgot to check back in, and then they got a big bill for their parking, because you have to actually remember to go back and check out. So you check in when you arrive, and then you check out when you leave, and lots of people are forgetting to check back in when they left, and then so they're picking it up, and so it hasn't worked. And the feedback that Richard's received from the chambers is that people are using the Ringo much more as an alternative if they want to, and we're using the card machine. So I can get you a slightly more detailed response from Richard if you like, but this is in agreement with the Cranley Chambers, the decision to stop the trial.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you want to come back on that?
No, I'm very satisfied with the answer you've got, so please
Okay.
don't have to pursue it.
Can I ask a question on that one?
Yes, Maurice.
Yeah, you say that the Chamber, because the Chamber was one who pushed us quite reasonably to actually do this. How much did it cost us to do that, and how much have they put in?
I can't remember, Chairman. I need to get those figures. I think we had a grant to implement it actually, but can I check and come back? I don't know off the top of my
It would
head.
be interesting to understand
Yeah,
how much
okay.
it's cost to do that, because
Yeah.
the problem with pay on exit car parking is that you need, we do not have the size of car parks and the facilities to achieve it in the normal way, and therefore we have to go to something different,
Yeah.
which is what this was.
Yeah.
It
Absolutely,
hasn't
I agree. With car parking is within our remit, and I think perhaps we should bring it to a future meeting. I'm not suggesting much. I don't know whether we'll ever have a meeting with not much on the agenda, but if we do, car parking is one that's got to be on there, I think. Garden waste subscription. Sorry, Anna, did you want to say
Well, I was
something?
just saying, it's not the environment ONS, it's the health and well-being one. I would just like to know when they do theirs, if they could find out with their growth bid for 5,000, what they are actually intending to do with it.
They did it last Tuesday, but the
Did they?
webcast isn't available, so it's secret.
Oh, right. Because
Ask Andy McLeod, he'll tell you.
when we're dithering with putting up the council tax and we're trying to find a thing that, unless I know what the growth bids are going to be used for, then to me it's money that we needn't use now.
Right.
That's my...
Peter Vickers did that meeting, didn't he? But do you
He
know what
did,
happened?
but we can get Calvin to give you an answer on that.
No, I don't mind, it's just that,
No, that's
that's my principle.
Yeah.
Unless it's for something,
Yes.
you just say, oh, well, we'd all like to have a bit more for something or other. To me it's not an essential.
Yeah.
It's like planning and collecting rubbish, and which is an essential, and
Yeah.
that brings me that the most important thing about any increase in the council tax or something is rubbish, planning and car parks. Boom, boom. Everything else is just a little padding in view of my...
There are other issues.
I know, but if you ask people, those are the most important things.
Bins
Rubbish,
every
rubbish,
week.
rubbish.
Yes, and you're right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. Of course you are. Okay. Is anybody unhappy with the garden waste subscriptions going up a £5? But that's
No,
comment
and I'm
upon
going to
that,
get a brown
anyone?
bin, so there'll be an extra brown bin.
Sorry, Stephen. No, everyone happy? Okay. What else have we got down here that's to do with us? The budget challenge planning, discretionary charging, fees. Roll. Is there anything else, Graham, that you think on here we should look at?
No,
Okay, so we're all happy with that. We're happy with that then for number 4. I've lost myself. Number 5, implement the growth proposals as shown as Annex 2, including staffing changes. I think there was an increase in £10,000 on a staff member to look up the local plan or something. Did I notice that?
So Chairman, that's part of the 240,000.
Yeah.
There's a proposal there just to strengthen the management resource there. But that's funded from the planning fees.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we're happy with that as well. Number 6, approve the changes to fees and charges as shown as Annex 3. If you haven't been through them, or I suggest you don't now, just, they're all pretty normal.
Yeah.
I would like to catch up on an update on zoos, if you don't mind. We're not referring to Waverley Borough Council offices here. We have got a zoo, and it's not us, apparently. Is that right?
Ah, yes.
And it's on page 36.
Are we on that before one?
Yeah, there is
It's on-
one. There is one.
No, we don't have one.
Oh, what, no, but it's classed as a zoo in terms of, no? Okay.
Yes.
Licensing?
Currently, we don't,
Okay.
we don't
We have no
currently
zoos.
within Waverley have any zoos, but we do have to have a price within our fees
Well,
and
we do
charges.
have.
I've got a zoo.
Yeah.
I told you last week, and it hasn't gone in the space of a week.
We'll come back to you on the thing.
We don't have any there that is licensed as a zoo.
There is one, just, I think, correcting you, there is one place, Budbridge Lakes, which has been forced to actually have a new licence because the range of different birds that they have there exceeds what is allowed under normal keeping, so they have to have a zoo licence.
I think that's the answer that was given last week. So
Anyway, the point here is, if we refer to page 36 and to line 7 on page 36,
Zoos,
okay?
yearly.
Now, okay, it says in 2016-17 it's a 3-year licence. It says that it's going to be a 4-year licence. To me, that is reducing the charge by 33%, not increasing it. And I'm just querying. I asked last week, and I don't think anyone understood. And I just want to know, are we going to put down the cost for these people over at Busbridge Lakes by a third, or are we going to put it up? Do you understand what I'm saying there? Does anybody notice what I'm thinking?
Yeah, no, you're right.
Am I wrong?
No, you're right.
Thank you. Okay, I was wrong last week, you think? It's the same thing.
Not a zoo expert by any means. But that note refers to the 16-17 budget. The existing charge that is in the column is the 17-18 budget. So the price hasn't changed, 17-18. Both years are 4 yearly. That note is
So it's not a
purely
33.3%
There's no
increase?
increase.
So that's a 0 at the end then, where it says
It should
33.3?
be a 0, yes, that is an
Yeah.
error.
Okay, so
Well spotted, Jane.
right and wrong, thank you. As always. Chops, no, we're not going to move on with that. Anything in fees that people want to complain about or tell the executive?
No, but we shouldn't.
Okay, we're moving to number 7, approve the delegation for agreeing building control fees to the strategic director and chief finance officer and the planning portfolio holder. I'm trusting those people. I think are we all happy with number 7 to
Yes.
delegate
Agreed.
those? Number 8, approve the general fund budget for 2018-19 incorporating the above changes and the staff pay award. That's 2% that's been put in. We're all happy with that, are we?
Agreed.
Number 9, agree that the executive carries out a review of the medium-term financial plan and general fund budget in the summer and takes appropriate action at the position as that
Yeah.
time. We're all happy with that, I think.
Yeah.
Number 10, turn to page 61. You've got Annex 5. That's the last fold-out flap. Draft capital programme. And at number 11, we are agreeing the budgets for capital schemes marked with asterisks on the schedules be approved, spending on the projects be subject to the agreement of the strategic director, chief finance officer, etc. At the bottom here you see we've got approved in principle but subject to further business case, and that's for Farnham Museum and pool car replacement. Is there anything we need to know about that?
So the pool car replacement, Jen, we're suggesting we need to do a bit more work on the business case for that first, because we've got 2 pool cars out there, but they are reaching the end of their life. And David Allen, who's the head of service here, asked pitched in for 2 electric cars. And so that makes perfect sense, and but we don't have the facilities here yet. So what we've said is we'll flag that up, do a proper business case, particularly in the light of some of the government incentives, etc., and then come back. So all we're asking for is an in principle approval, albeit with no amount, because we'll bring that back with a business case. So that's what that's about. And Farnham Museum, last February the council agreed that we would look at options for the location of the Farnham Museum, given the age and condition of the building. Not at all with a view to not having a museum, but looking at alternative locations that were more cost effective. And so it does need some work, it's not urgent work, and so what we're saying is just put the brakes on the doing the work to the Farnham Museum building until we've looked at those options. Because what we don't want to do is spend a load of money on it and then sell it or develop it for something else, having relocated the museum elsewhere. So that review is underway at the moment.
Okay, members, now you've had a quick chance there to skate your eyes down the list on that page there, and the money being spent.
And it's me again, asking these questions I don't know the answers to. Can you tell me, do we supply now rubbish bins to people? So
yes, free.
Yes.
Free?
We do.
No.
Not only under certain circumstances. Yeah. Not
So that, I mean, £90,000 for replacing waste and recycling of garden waste. 27 is coming out of the reserve funding. Only 500 quid from S106 funding, but every time in planning it always says recycle bins and everything else. So I presume all the new houses, the developers would have to supply them if they needed them. And there's 62 coming from external funding. So what is the external funding that isn't 106?
Yeah,
Good
so
question.
that 62,000 is the expected income from sales of garden waste bins. So when new subscribers sign up to the garden waste service, they pay for their bin.
Yeah.
So that's a budget
Right.
neutral item. So that 62,000 would be only for garden waste bins.
Right, so it shouldn't be then in the bit when it says waste and recycling containers including garden waste. We're not including garden waste because people are going to have to buy them.
So the 90,000 includes the garden waste bins, and the other columns explain
Okay.
how we're paying for the 90,000. So we will spend 90,000 on bins, but 62 will come from money that we get from customers, and it's the residual 27.5 that comes from Waverley's budgets, in effect.
Right.
Can I just ask, are
Okay,
you
I
sure
think we
we're
need to
going
look-
to sell £62,000
Pounds
of
worth
bins to people?
In one
How
year.
much each? A grand?
I'm trying to think.
A lot, isn't it?
I'm just,
£20.
They're expensive pieces.
Not a grand a piece.
It's
They're 25 quid.
well, that's why I can't believe that
It's more than 62 bins they're going to sell.
why do we
Yeah.
supply, so people should have to buy their dustbins like they did in the old days, except when everybody went to the automatic bin from
Yeah.
the one,
Really
which
did.
was fair enough. And once they were all done, after that you bought your own.
Because
If it was damaged, you have to go and replace it yourself,
One area about
We shouldn't
policy,
be
I
spending-
believe,
providing rubbish bins.
one area about policy, I believe, is the introduction or encouragement of people to go to 140 litre bins as opposed to 240 litre bins. And if they do that, I believe they provide it free. So if we persuade a customer, or a customer wishes to go to a smaller bin, we would change it over and provide that bin free. Where under normal circumstances, if you've got a bin which is broken or whatever and damaged, it's your responsibility to replace
Yeah.
it.
Right.
And any new
Seems
property.
Did you want to come in on that?
Sorry.
Well, only on the 60,000 we think, but we'll check all this out. We think we charge £20 for a bin, that we're expecting 3,000 new customers on the garden waste
I'm one of
subscription.
them. I will be one of them.
Oh, good. Excellent.
Well, because I keep going through the...
If you're the only one, it's going to cost you 62 grand.
But there's a lot of houses coming online.
We did
Yeah.
more than that last year.
And they've all had
And they
small
increased.
gardens, so they probably will want.
If we can keep on with
Okay.
this, look,
Thank
going
you for
through this.
answering.
May I ask myself, at the very top is Aaron's Hill Skate Park, £15,000, and I was talking to one of our members of staff earlier in the year, and the Farnham Skate Park Association were looking to have lights put up so that during the 5 winter months, between the solstices or whatever it happens to be, or the medium, when it's darker at 3 or 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, so that they could skate until 7 o'clock or whatever, not to upset the neighbours too much. And the officer went through the process and said, yeah, all the stuff's in there, it's going to cost about 15 grand. Now that 15 grand here appears to be against Aaron's Hill. I don't know whether it's in there in the budget, but I've been led to believe that it would be. So can anyone tell us here, or perhaps should I take up another place, or is that a mistake? In which skate park?
I haven't heard about the Farnham Park skate park.
No, Farnham skate park.
Farnham
Farnham
skate park.
Is that the one by the
Farnham
leisure
skate
centre?
park,
Yes.
Okay, we'll have a look at that then.
Yeah.
I would have thought there was going to be
Yeah.
15,000 in there to put in 3 lamp stands and for the winter.
Might be in this year, I don't know, we'll have a look and come back to you.
Members, Mary?
Oh, thank you, Chairman. Forgive my ignorance, but can you please explain infrastructure upgrades?
So this is in, apologies for the poor description, it's IT infrastructure.
Oh, no.
So that's all the kit in our IT room.
Yep.
So that's some of the server units, basically, that keep all of our systems running. But apologies, that means lots of other things as well, so we should have said IT infrastructure.
Thank you.
We use a different supplier than the system in the chamber.
Yes, we
That's
do.
been bad.
We're not going to ask about the Northgate iLap upgrade to Engage, are we?
You just have.
No,
No,
we're
no,
not.
it was
No, we're not.
infrastructure. No, this is
Because
the
it means the
Northgate.
same as the other ones, doesn't it?
So we're all happy on this, Chairman, then?
I think we're happy with that, unless members, anything particular you think we should cut out or be added or have added in. Is there something that you don't want in there where we can save money? No, it's your last chance. Okay, we're all agreed that that's going to go through to the executive. As it is, we have considered 1 and 2. I'm quite sure that Fiona has written loads of stuff down and that that's going to go through to the executive, saying we're basically happy with what's going on, except I would like personally that the executive considers other options than the 3%, but I am alone in that view, it appears, unless anyone else wishes to shout. Let us move on to item 8, is it? 9? No, 7. Service plans, page 63 to 82. Louise, at last, you get your chance.
Thank you, Chairman. Service plans are a really good opportunity for every scrutiny to have a look at the plans in the different service areas for the coming year. And you will receive progress checks against those service plans at 6 months and at the year end. I think members will remember in the past we used to sort of bundle them into a joint ONS scrutiny meeting, and for the last couple of years we've focused on the sort of top priorities in those service plans. This year we're reverting back to presenting full service plans again, and another change this year is to say to heads of service, by all means, if you want to sort of take projects which quite often aren't contained within one single financial year, you can add in sort of up to sort of the 3. That brings it in with the same as the budget. So remembering that service plans are also a really important element of the management performance framework, because they link the corporate strategy and the priorities there through the service plan actions down to individual officer performance targets. So there's another really important role for service plans. Under the remit of this committee tonight, you've got service plans from environmental services, from planning, and an element of the community service, which is the grounds maintenance, which falls under Kelvin's area, but it's under the remit of this committee, so you've got a small bit of that. My colleagues, I'm sure, will be happy to, although apologies, because Richard's not here and Elizabeth, but Graham and Annie and Victoria, if Buckroyd is here also to help out.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, members, I don't know whether you've had an opportunity to run through these and make any comments, jot things down against them. I won't say Alfred Road again, for the bottom of page 1 of 11, which is at page 65. This is improving the street cleaning schedules. Do you want to go through them one by one? Or are we going to just go through, if anybody's got any comments? Your decision. Okay, we've got on page 2 of them, okay, I'm going to go to the page 66 because it's the the document page. On page 66, you'll see in there we've got ES 2.4 is work with contractors to ensure miscollections per week do not exceed 26 per 104,000. Can I assume that that will change if we make a decision later to change that figure when that comes up in key performance indicators? Yeah, but these do interact with everything else. Again, we've got more on waste and recycling there. What did I see under that one? Progress in respect of the joint action group. We were told a year and a half ago or something like that that we put together we were going to get tough on people and start charging them for dog fouling and the rest of it. And I understand that's just happened. We have just introduced £100 fine, 75 quid if your dog's quit or something. Is that right?
Victoria, are you aware of where we're at?
It's not within my direct area,
Okay.
so but I do know that that's been introduced, that we are looking at.
We're looking at joint
Yeah.
service with East Hampshire to increase fouling and littering patrols. No cost to Waverley, because the cost will be met through the fines that come in. We've had to level our costs in terms of the actual fixed penalty notices. There is a separate paper on that committee.
Is this the initiative which I think the Chief Constable had paid for the 75 grand or something like that, wasn't it? Or is this different?
No, that's the joint enforcement
That's the
team.
joint enforcement thing.
Yeah.
The joint enforcement initiative isn't the joint enforcement team.
I think it is the same thing actually, but I agree. It probably should have said joint enforcement team rather than initiative. But are you saying, Chairman, that the committee would like a report back on its?
Well, I've always queried whether that should be us or not, whether that is environment.
It's
going
back to the committee in March.
So it is coming.
We have something coming in
Fine. We don't need to discuss that now. Then, great.
Can I raise,
please.
on page 68, 4 of 11 for Environmental Services, ES 4.1, it says conduct a strategic review of off-street parking provision. But it doesn't seem to me to be as fundamental a review as would be opportunist to do. Look, and personally, certainly the large car parks in Farnham, I'd like us looking at the potential for doing something similar to the car park in Guildford near the cinema, sort of go down into the ground, create 2 layers of parking and 3 layers of flats above them. We'd create massive boost to the economy, we'd create more parking, and it would be a big opportunity. We seem to be only looking at it as a car park, and we should be looking at that space from a more fundamental viewpoint.
And you talked about Upper Hart, which is well above the flood level, because we've got obviously our central car park is right down on the flood level, so is Wagon Yard is right by the river.
I wasn't being specific. I think the review needs to include that, and it doesn't. And it doesn't say so.
No, I think it needs to be, this target needs to be adjusted to reflect what we've just talked about.
Thank you.
Excellent. How do we do that? Because we're not recommending to the exec or anything, are we? Just officers take it on board?
You are, Chairman, yeah.
So we'll add it into the observations that you make.
Is everybody happy with that to be added? Sorry,
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would welcome any comments, positive comments, just like that to this review.
Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm sorry. We've got a big upset at the moment in Farnham. I don't want to spend long on this, but where Waverley has marched into the conservation area and put up big yellow things to stop traveller vehicles getting into car parks.
I'm aware of that, and at the moment that development has ceased.
Removed or
no,
proceeding? Okay, decision to be taken and reassessment or something like that.
I'm looking at alternative methods of restricting access to that car park.
Thank you very much. I'm quite sure the Town Council, the Parish Council will be very, very happy to hear that. Thank you very much indeed. People, any more on car parks on that issue there? Okay, improved customer service.
Sorry, did you reject my suggestion?
No, we've just taken that forward.
Yep.
No, it's not happening. It's too efficient for you. It's too efficient for you.
I'm just checking on you.
Anybody interested in improved customer service? It's page 69. Open space ranger services. I've got to look at the new ranger at Farnham Park coming up. Is that right? We've got a new ranger at Farnham Park coming up. Is that right? Food.
I think we just recruited one, yeah.
Chairman, I would question whether the compliance with the new data protection regulations actually improves customer services or decreases it. The amount of time and
Of course, there's a
effort
lot
and
of
the
work
changes
for
that
officers, I think, isn't it?
It's not something we have any choice about though, Jenny, but it's not something we have any choice about, but...
No, I realise that.
But yeah, I take the point that will it improve customer satisfaction? Well, I don't know, because hopefully customers won't notice that we see.
One of the problems with that is not necessarily within this Borough Council's operations, but in other things where volunteers, for instance, will start to drop out and refuse because they don't wish to comply with the new regulation.
Sorry, yes, David.
On 4.6, I would like them to look at, like in the Crown Court, changing the parking to chevron parking. That'll be much more easier to park, because the parking spaces are very narrow, and the job to get in and out of your vehicle. Chevron parking will serve the purpose.
Would that not make cars longer at the edges and therefore reduce space? I mean, is there sufficient space to be able to do that, or does the middle bit compensate for the sides? I suppose it does, doesn't it? Any ideas on that?
Chairman, I think we'll note that for the whole
strategy. Has it been looked at, perhaps? We wouldn't really know, would we, here? But thank you very much for that comment. That's a good suggestion, I think.
I think that might apply to all car park factories.
It might cost a lot of money making the curbs all staggered just so that people know where they're parking, I suppose, or something like that, I don't know. But whatever it is. It makes our lives easier. Environmental protection. No, 4.3 and 4.4, we've got, that's us, isn't it, the car park enforcement contract. That will be coming to us, will it? 4.3 on page 68. I'm sorry, ES 4.3, park enforcement contract, carry out the full options for the contract. Is that coming to us? Is that our remit if we want to look at it? It's March 2019. By when? I mean, it's something we might want to consider later in the agenda. If you want to look at that. And
sorry, Chairman, just before we move on from that point, then, if you could let us know, because we don't all, whenever there's a renewal of a contract, it doesn't always go through a committee. But if you've got a particular interest in that, we'd need to factor that into the lead-in time. So it'd be good to know if you wanted to have some kind of oversight of that early on.
Okay. So this is the contract which is jointly with Guildford, isn't it? Well, that Guildford administer for us, am I right, in the car parking enforcement, or is that on-street enforcement they do and we do our own? Which one's that?
What you just said, yeah. So we do our car parks to off-street, and on-street is a Guildford.
And it's both of those that we'll be looking at then, is it? Or it's a parking enforcement contract in place, so it doesn't really tell me.
I think it says off-street here, so in 4.3.
Yes,
so that's our own. So that would normally be just a routine tender and go out for a new contract. But I think if the committee wants to have a look at that or get involved in some way, the sooner we know, the better.
Can I suggest, Mr. Chairman, that perhaps we ask you to look at the potential synergies between the two sets of parking and whether one contract to do both or expanding Guildford to do it all would be a sensible way forward.
That one of the options we'll look at then.
I believe that proposal's been put forward already.
Yes,
I'm not quite sure where I read it, but I'm sure
there has,
to amalgamate the two contracts so that they're not just wasting time with two different people wandering in the same area.
Okay, thank you. I noticed at 4.4 we've got, I think a lot of people there will be happy, that says investigate the potential for use of electric vehicle charging points and off-street parking spaces and build a business case and whatever. That's ongoing. We probably don't need to. Again, it's for us to oversee that if we want to. But what are we expecting to come forward from that and when? I mean, it says March 19, but surely we don't have any sort of solid proposals coming up within the next month or two.
Not in the next month or two. In fact, I was speaking to Tom Horwood this morning about this, and it will be sooner than March 19, but it will be over probably in the summer, actually, that will come through.
Okay. Any other comments on car parks, or we move on to back on to the improved customer service, which...
If I may, Chairman.
Yes, Mary.
Thank you, Chairman. Forgive me, I'm not sure which is the relevant point here on page 69. I think it's probably 4.6. But it's to actually ask the portfolio planner to look at the Village Way car park in Cramley on a Thursday, which is underutilised by, I'd say, about 50 to 60%. On many occasions we go into the market on a Thursday and you can't get parked, although there's an abundance of parking spaces available, but the market has cordoned off a section that can't be used, and that this is enforced up until 8 p.m. at night. So it's been a bugbear of mine for quite some time, and I've raised the issue with the executive on this occasion before, but I don't seem to be getting very far. But as I say, on Thursday just gone we went down there, and I'd say there was several available car parking spaces, and you're losing an income there. You seriously are. It's a dwindling market. Although
you've brought it forward, Mary, and
you.
You've got us all behind you on that, and that is going to be solved tomorrow. Yes, well, maybe the day after. Yeah, but it will. Now it's been aired. It's on the webcast. I mean, no one can say you didn't tell them.
No.
That's it. Point made. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you for allowing me.
Snoxall Fields. You're not going to mention Snoxall?
Well, again, I just have to say. I think as a borough, you really should be looking towards your towns and parishes and your hamlets as to what assets they have available that you could be utilising and working in partnership with, because as a parish council they are asset rich but cash poor, and they have to look for ways of best using the assets they've got. And going back to where we said about the precept, you know, it's about being fair and being saying to local people there's options for various parking, or various charges for various people, all day stoppers, just the person who's going to the health centre, the leisure centre, whatever. So there's an opportunity there and lessons to be learned across the borough.
We're happy you're happy with what you see here that
absolutely delighted.
Excellent. Wyatt, sorry, were you? No, you weren't. Good. Okay. Ranger services, data protection, we know that's a problem. Health and safety, I don't think. We've got it on page 71 at ES 5.8. Again, please don't shoot the messenger, as you seem to want to. It says here, work with the economic development team to build more effective links with chambers of commerce and businesses, etc., etc. I think I've read that in goodness knows how many Waverley documents for 15 years. Build a closer relationship with the Chamber of Commerce, and it's never really happened. Now, I'm not saying it's us, it might be the Chamber of Commerce, speaks the word, but it might be you. But it's, are we really going to do this? I don't like to see things which are on there every year, forever and ever, and you know, how do we do that? Is this going to happen?
I hope it's going to happen, and it has happened in the past, yes. and been here at Waverley for quite some time. It has happened better in previous years, but currently I think we want to improve that, and particularly for the businesses within Waverley that would benefit from the advice and information that we can offer from the Environmental Health Service in particular, that we would like to be able to offer that to Waverley businesses. So yes.
What can they do for us, and what can we do for them particularly?
Each way round as to...
Well, if we're working effective links with the Chambers of Commerce and the businesses, and
quite a lot of our businesses do have links with chambers, and so their first link is actually with the Chamber of Commerce, and it might not actually be with the Environmental Health team. So actually being able to link together would be of benefit.
Okay. Contaminated land strategies at 5.9. I think that's one for another day.
I wonder if I might have your indulgence and speak to that topic.
You're more than welcome to.
Thank you,
Councillor Bolton.
I believe in the short time that I was head of economic development, I have achieved something very substantial, and that is to drastically improve relationships with the Chambers of Commerce. I can only recommend that you speak to any of the heads of the various Chambers of Commerce and ask them for their opinion. They will be very approving of what I have done.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well,
Well
5.8 is sorted. So that's handy. We'll put a tick against that. Councillor Isherwood?
No, I was just going to say before Councillor Bolton came in there, speaking from my knowledge of Hazelmere and the Chamber of Commerce there, tremendous support has been given to them all the way through. I really do think that things have improved dramatically. Really do. Thank you, Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, good. Thank you very much. People and places on page 71, protecting and enhancing the health of the community. Air quality, we've got that as a next agenda. We don't need to look at air monitoring. That's we're going to have a short report on that, the separate item. But I note from 7.2, I don't know whether other members want to comment on that, but it says we are going to develop a revised air quality action plan with partners through the air quality steering group, which Councillor Bolton chaired on Monday, actually. Congratulations on his new position, portfolio holder for the environment. Implement actions identified in accordance with the agreed timetable. I don't think we've got a timetable at the moment, but what I am pleased to see is that we've got an acknowledgement there that we need to update the air quality action plan, put some good proper measures in for Farnham. It's a health issue, it's important. Very pleased with that. Whether we've got it, we have problems elsewhere, Godalming and possibly also Hazelmere's had one or two exceedances reported, but not over the annual mean.
Mr. Chairman,
hopefully we can take that forward, can we, Mr. Bolton, through the group?
With your indulgence, if I could just briefly comment, we have a commitment to set up a Farnham working group which will report to Waverley's Air Quality Steering Group. And we look forward to all residents and interested participants in Farnham joining and contributing to that group. And you know that it's in the timetable.
Absolutely. I'm not sure when we have a meeting. I understand that the members from Farnham have been identified, and also from the Farnham Society.
They have.
And that's good, but hopefully we'll have a meeting soon in that respect. Do you have anything to say on air quality because you're a sorry member as well for that sort of thing?
Like Councillor Bolton, I'm really pleased with the progress being made. I'll continue to put pressure on everybody sat around that table to actually come up with tangible things to happen rather than more talking shops.
Can I just check? I mean, I remember back in 2013 I put in a response to the local plan, which I said you've got to have an air quality action plan in your local plan, and it isn't there. And then it actually got put in there. Now, we've got an air quality action plan in the local plan, but we're going to be changing the air quality action plan. How does that sit with the local plan as we put it through? If we're sort of accepting that what we've got isn't suitable.
There would be consultation with our planning team, so with their local plan as to what's actually in the local plan and what's in any air quality action plan, so that they would work together.
They would need to work together. Yeah. Okay, thanks. We'll check on that. Strategic theme, people protecting and assisting the community to help itself in adversity. Any comments on that, members? Page 72. For health and other issues, page 73. So was that Morris?
Sorry, which one were you asking about?
I'm just running through these. We're almost at the end of them. Page 72 and 3, we've got the people, services and transactions, then people, health and safety of staff and council properties. And on page 74 we've got a strategic theme without a title, and I think it should say energy efficiency. What do you reckon?
I have a query on all of that report in that you've got the lead officer being a large mechanic and he's just about to leave.
He's left, and when it was written he was currently here, so...
He left on last Friday.
Yeah.
We will miss him in Bramley because of our environmental action group, etc.
Well, we wish him the best, and we'll put another name in when we found one. Thank you very much for that. Yes, we're almost to the end of this, aren't we? Energy efficiency, so someone here must care about energy efficiency, I'm sure, members. Is this for ourselves, or this is just for the council, isn't it, for Waverley's own energy efficiency? We care deeply about that. And we are got a target currently of 3%. In energy, is that every year we reduce by 3%?
Year on year.
Put our council tax up 3%, we were on rent. Our energy reduction down 3%.
You've got to balance the counter tax rise with the government reduction in our grant. I think it's worthwhile. We didn't say that before, we forgot to.
we know we've got problems with the government grants, yes. We should never have agreed to having a negative subsidy in the first place, but that's another matter.
I'm going to ask you to agree with this topic.
Okay, no, we've got more. I thought I'd finished that lot. Sorry, planning, right. Page 77.
Chairman, can I just say a lot of this, the committee have been through as part of the Management Stewart report that you considered at your previous meeting. So most of the planning, as in the the development control aspects of this, have just come across from the planning improvement review report that you considered in November, and then it just bolted on local plan and so planning policy and building control onto that.
Thank you very much. I mean, we'll just point out at 9.1, because this is something for an item later. It's the Peterson and Calvert French and Great Pond. Whether we bring that onto our agenda for the next meeting, I suppose, because it's going to be coming forward fairly soon, isn't it? I think there was an update at last week's ONS meeting, at community meeting, where they were told that we were expecting to sign an agreement with the National Trust last week, so that may have been signed, has it?
I think it is on the agenda tomorrow.
We've got that coming forward.
Following the joint work of the National Trust, the approval we've received this afternoon to go forward.
Okay, so that's the National Trust are on board, are they?
Yeah.
Okay, but
There are some
that will be
caveats on
coming,
it, but
that's coming forward to us, you can.
Possibly that's a question that's mainly aimed at Graham. Is the potential here for some of our costs in the improvements at Frensham being funded as a SAN? Because they'd attract people to go there rather than...
It's an SBA.
Well, already isn't it? It's an SBA itself.
Yeah, we need to conduct a programme assessment of whether we can do this or not at some point.
I think it's outside the
it's right adjacent to it,
yeah.
It's on the boundary.
It's too far out, but we did look at that a while ago, and I think it wasn't appropriate because of its location, and actually I think the National Trust would have an issue with that anyway, because they probably wouldn't want it to be. But anyway, there's no proposal to do that. But so this is about the building that we're going to do, the improved visitor centre.
But that will come to next one, so we don't need to dwell on that at the moment. If we can move on to, what are we going to agree on this? Let's get back to our documents. Now, recommended that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee considers the service plan objectives, makes any observations to the executive. We've had some of those, particularly on parking, and recommends that the heads of services review their service plans for 18-19 once the new corporate strategy is agreed. Does that make sense, everybody? Mary?
Sorry, Chairman, I've perhaps missed something, but could I make an observation on page 79 with regards to 4.1? Or have I missed it?
Ooh, I don't know, I haven't looked at it yet. 70...
Oh, I jumped in ahead of myself.
79?
I'm on page 79.
4.1, affordable housing. Please do, yes.
30%, yes, it's great, but it's an observation that worries me slightly in terms of we don't get control of this and put some system in place to protect us. We have several major strategic applications having gone through. They're now coming through in phases, and with two of those, one in particular, has come through in its first phase of no affordable housing. Now, I know that over the lifetime of the development, they will have to deliver the affordable housing. But when it says here that, about compliance and enforcement where necessary, you're looking over a period of many years of being able to enforce that if it's not delivered. So I just err on the side of caution as to how we manage this, because a couple of sites where it's not viable to build in the next decade, it might be viable to build in the next 15 to 20 years, won't deliver your affordable housing, and therefore the very purpose of what we were trying to achieve by creating affordable houses in some situations with these strategic sites may not get delivered. So I think we're between a rock and a hard place as to how we can police this, but I think it's a key observation that it's a pitfall that we might not be able to get our housing, especially if we are looking at phased applications coming through where they're not delivering in the first phase the affordable housing.
Do you want to sum that up in a few words for us to agree to put forward to the executive, just that we need to take care? I don't know, we've got a Section 106 officer, haven't we, who's going to, or will have, who's going to be...
Mr. Chairman, I think this is around, when we negotiate Section 106, we make sure that the delivery of the affordable homes is on an appropriately phased basis, and of course the developer will say it's not viable, and for me to make my contribution up front, it needs to be backloaded. So I mean, it could be an observation to the executive around our policy on Section 106 is that we should try and front load or appropriately phase rather than just go with the developer's proposal, I guess, because they're always going to say do it right at the end, aren't they? Because that's not where the value is to them.
I think you summed it beautifully. I think you're absolutely right. What's the point of me?
Thank you, Chairman. We just adding to Mary's comment, we've got another planning application coming in that is just that. It's in the outline at the moment, but it will be phased. And the first phase does not have the 35% affordable. So it's something that we should be very closely monitoring.
Yes, but you're talking in general terms. Obviously, we can't talk about individual planning applications here.
We cannot.
But delivery we can, and in general terms, that's what we're here for, is just planning, it's under our remit. Thank you very much.
Should we be firmer on that and ask that officers look to whether we need to revise policy to include a policy that affordable housing should be phased at the same phasing as the rest of the housing, or some equivalent?
I think if you made a general point, because we are talking about policy, if you made a general point to the executive, by all means say that, but I'm not sure the executive will be able to implement that in every case. So I think the sentiment is that the Section 106s need to be more appropriate in their phasing, rather than have early phases with no affordable housing. But I'm not sure you'll be able to have a one-size-fits-all for all developments, because they'll all be phased differently. But obviously you can pass whatever comment you like, but what we can build into the Waverley's policy framework, clearly it's got to be flexible enough, but robust enough as well. I get that balance right.
But Graham, would you not agree that if we're trying to maximise the amount of affordable housing under Section 106s, then we have to allow them to do it later, or they will all say it's not viable. We can't do so. By nature, unfortunately, if we want to maximise it, we have to agree for them to do it after they've taken some profit from flogging off the private ones, or it won't be in there. And
so that's absolutely right. So that's the reality. But I think members are saying, but we need to sort of push back as much as possible and
make sure we get it, and not have changes where it's taken out and they've lost it all. Okay, we're happy with that, are we? The recommendations I went through, recommendations 1 and 2, that note the objectives, pass on those observations. I'm sure that we've got some pretty decent notes there, have we, Fiona? Thank you very much, and recommend that the heads of services review their service plans. Is that agreed, members?
Agreed.
Thank you. Now, item 8, if we can move on swiftly because of the time, 4:02. We did start early. Performance management reports, 2017-18, quarter 2. So I'm going to ask Nora Dobbin to introduce this item. Just waited all this time. Not patient.
It was very interesting and informative. The second quarter has seen a small drop in performance by 5%, with 68 indicators performing on target compared to 73% of indicators in the previous quarter. The yearly trend analysis and figures can be found on page 87 of this agenda. Our planning services had a very good performance with only 2 out of 14 performance indicators outside of the target. This relates to the following indicators. Firstly, P2 with 13 out of 35 planning appeals allowed against all applications. Secondly, P5 with 93% of 3 applications determined within the 8 weeks target, impacted by a handful of very complex cases which took longer to resolve. The performance from processing of all major, non-major, other
and also the residual applications was lower than the target. The number of building control applications checked within 10 days target has also improved, with 100 out of 106 checks completed on time. Also in the second quarter, 17 new affordable homes were granted permission. Moving on to the environmental services, the overall performance remained at the same level when compared with the preceding quarter, with 4 indicators performing on target, 2 in amber, and the remaining 2 indicators being off target by more than 5%. The residual household waste per household in kilos, referring to indicator NI 191, although still off target, has further improved from the previous quarter and is now at its lowest level since the first quarter of 2016 and 17, returning back to amber after 4 quarters in red. The improvement can be linked to a very successful food waste recycling campaign run at the beginning of last year, and the continuous service improvement work done by the team. Now to the subject that was already previously mentioned by the committee with regards to fly tipping and reject rates as well. The reject rate continues to increase due to contamination issues with the waste brought from the bring sites. And as previously mentioned, the bring sites are those areas in the local community, such as Waverley car parks, where members of the public can take items such as card, paper and tin for recycling. This higher contamination rate can be attributed to the following issue, highlighted in a BBC investigation, which said, and I would like to quote, there was 1 million fly tipping incidents in England in 2016 and 17, which represent a 7% increase from the previous year and the 4th year in a row that fly tipping has increased. Professor Simi Dawoodi, an expert in environmental policy at Newcastle University, attributes the rise in fly tipping to a lack of local facilities and the cost of getting bulk items legally collected. That's the end of the quote. This will likely be further compounded by the fact that in December 2017, Surrey County Council introduced limits to the daily free allowance of chargeable non-household waste such as rubble, plasterboard and soil. Added there are further changes that took effect at the start of this month, which concern restrictions on which community recycling centres, vans, trailers and pickups can be taken to, and also reduction to the opening hours of most of the community recycling centres in the county. These changes are likely to cause issues not only at the bring sites, but may also impact the number of fly tipping incidents in the future. However, in spite of these changes, the average number of days to remove the fly tips has further shortened to 1.6 days compared to the target of 2 days, which is particularly worthy of note given that there were 5 more incidents of fly tipping in the quarter compared to the last. The consistent performance for this indicator can be linked to the efforts in the close monitoring of the contractors through regular meetings to ensure targets are being met. The street cleaning compliance indicator has significantly improved in the second quarter as well, returning back to green after 2 consecutive quarters of underperforming. This can be linked to the continuous work done between Veolia and Waverley to improve staffing levels and service provision. The performance on the average number of bins has dropped slightly in the second quarter, with 7 more bins missed than in the last quarter. The team is continuing to work with Veolia to improve performance. However, the contractual level at which penalties can be imposed on the contractor is set at 50 bins per week. It is therefore proposed to change the current target of 26 missed bins set by the previous Governance Committee to align it with the contractual target of 50 bins per week starting from the 1st of April 2018. That will be all from me. Any observations and comments?
Thank you very much, Nora. Okay, fly tipping problems increased, yes. Members?
Can I just ask, on the days, do we exclude weekend days for things like fly tipping?
I'm not sure.
Just because I had one in Whitley on Friday, but of course I said they wouldn't expect it to go until I gave them Monday, Tuesday, so it should be gone by Wednesday.
So is it working days or is it actual
Yes.
days? We'll check that.
We'll check
Yeah.
that.
Just because, I mean, obviously,
I think it's always been working days.
Yeah, it should be working days, yeah.
I just wanted to mention paragraph 9 on page 84, particularly to Annie Writing, because I mentioned it earlier. So we've got a target of 54% and we're exceeding it by 5.94 in that paragraph. Which wasn't exactly the same as the good figures that I read at the beginning of the meeting. But I'm not sure, there's probably different months, whatever, but I just wanted to check up on that. Now, members, mostly what we're looking at here, we've got some red ones we might wish to talk about. So I'm going to bring those up. There's a good reason for most of them, and I don't think it's anything for us to worry too much about, except our planning appeals. Yeah, appeals lost. Does anybody wish to speak on that?
Chairman,
Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chairman. I would welcome the scrutiny committee's comments on target E4, which is page 93. This is the item which there is a suggestion that we relax the target back to what we contracted with what is agreed with the contractor.
50% thing. 50.
No, 50.
Yeah.
50
Yeah.
per 100,000.
Because it's at 26 at the moment. It doesn't
don't
sound
meet it.
very logical what's being asked though, does it? Because I fully appreciate that we've got at 50 is the level at which we don't, at which we can start taking action, penalising. Now, we don't want that to be our target. I mean, 50 is bad enough for us to penalise them. 26 is too tough and much tougher than any other councils can possibly achieve. We're achieving 40, 37, numbers like that. If we go to 50, then that's the worst. That's where we penalise them. So that wouldn't be a sensible thing to set it at, logically, I don't think, if you don't mind me saying.
No,
I don't know what other members think. I think 40 or 35.
I'd go for 40.
If I could just conclude, I welcome your comments. I personally am not really in favour of increasing it from 25 to 50.
No.
I understand, I know the figures are not there, but quarter 3 will show remember we're dealing with quarter 2. Quarter 3 will show an improvement because officers have worked very hard with the contractor and encouraged the contractor to stop missing bins. So it just shows that when officers work hard, we can improve.
My observation to that, Councillor Bolton, would be, but is that the area where we want efforts, in particular senior officers' time, to be put? And to me, 26, 50 bins is such a tiny percentage. We're not getting complaints from members of the public about missing bins. Okay, sometimes a bin's missed, it's cleared up the next morning or something, but it's certainly not a problem. So, no, I don't want senior officers to be putting time into that. And so therefore I don't want the target to be lower and giving us one of these red lights which suggests that somebody should be diving in. To me, the 50, if that's what was sensible at the time of the contract, that's what's sensible to be monitoring at.
But if that's a punishable thing, then we've got to have a target that's higher than where we're punishing.
I'd go for 40.
What's the target for?
I would say go 40.
I mean, I appreciate what Wyatt says. I wouldn't want anyone to misunderstand it when saying that it's not important. Obviously, when somebody's bin hasn't been emptied and it's sat out there and they've got to leave it out, perhaps on a narrow pavement, whatever, sometimes it is a problem for them. But nevertheless, it's got to happen occasionally. Trucks break down, things get missed, and sometimes people don't put their bins out and they blame Waverley for it anyway. So, and we never really know at the end of it. But what do members think in respect of the 50 or 26? Or we don't. Any change from the 26 looks at first sight as we're lowering our standards. Well, that's not something. I think we've attained it once. Is that correct, officers? I think we were told that we might have attained that once, but we're usually hitting 37 or 40, which is far better than other councils are doing. We don't want to make it. We don't take a target away or make it so simple that it doesn't matter to them. It's got to be better than where we penalise them, hasn't it? So it's got to be somewhere lower than 50. But if we can, if 26 is far too heavy and it can't be enforced because you say
Yeah.
50 is the point where we
If I may, Chairman,
Mary.
I think seeing a red flag there to the department is such a shame because it's not deserved. It really isn't. I mean, and that really came out of the group.
Yeah.
In relation to the number of bins they collect, that percentage is minimal, and then the return rate to collect the bin is, you know, it's exemplary what they do, and I think that target was perhaps when it was set unrealistic, and it's very, very tough. I don't think we should go to 50, and especially in the climate of which we talked about earlier. But I would say, as an observation, I think to see a red there is disingenuous to the work that the department and the...
I'm not sure anybody would take it that way. I think that people would look upon it as being the performance of the contractor rather than the performance of the staff. I mean, although in some ways linked, but very distantly, it's actually generally to do with lorries breaking down and or staff not being able to get enough staff at Christmas time for the Veolia.
But I don't even think that I think the reds, you know, people aren't going to look at it, they're just going to go, it's a red target and what they're doing wrong. But when you look at the contract and you look at what they're doing, it's not justified. It's not, you know, it's unfair.
I would agree.
So, members, what do you think about 35 or 40, or do you want to go along with what is in front of us at 50? I don't see the logic in the 50. Do other people agree that that wouldn't be sensible to set it at a level where we penalise them?
Yeah,
that's not a target, is it?
Through you, Chairman, not 50. I'd be very happy with 40, which is roughly between 26 is nearly 30, 50, halfway is 40. And as we
Chairman,
don't
I
get...
see it as illogical to not use the contract number.
That's a penalty, isn't it? Would we set a target for performance at a penalty?
Well, when the red light comes on saying do something about it, that's what you said in your contract. When you get to 50, do something about it or we're going to take some money off you. We put the two different teams under different number pressures.
Do we have any positive driver for them to encourage them to beat 50? So there's nothing at the moment to make them want to beat 50 because that's where they, other than the target we have.
What the contract is saying is we have a tolerance of that, of 50, and that's quite normal, and that's what we've signed up to. So
well, it's tougher than others.
I just see that we're doing 37 and 40, and if we turn around and say, oh, now we're going to set a target of 50, what we're saying is it's okay for this to get worse.
Yeah.
I don't like the idea of that. It doesn't make sense to me. But I don't know, that might be me. I've members.
So I said 40 is mine.
Okay, the committee considers, if you would forward to the executive, it considers that we'd like the executive to look at the idea of 40 instead, because the target, because that's what we're achieving and we don't want the standards to be reduced. Is that summary, or other members? I know, but that's a majority, but not all.
Chairman, if I may, I just want to, for myself, I need to be sure, as being part of the group, at this sensitive time in the public domain, is it wise to be saying or suggesting that we are looking at lowering hiring targets? What message does that give? I mean, I would go to our officer for guidance on that one, because we are at a critical time when we're looking at putting together recommendations to the executive on a contract that's going to be awarded in 2019, and the paper here says exactly what you've just said there. We're going to lessen
Yes. Well, I don't think officers would have put it in front of us here if they had considered that there was a problem with it in light of what else was on the agenda. I don't see it that way. I think it's just a genuine thing that says that we never meet this. We never actually meet the 26. It's a very tough target, and it's not actionable in any way. It doesn't mean anything.
Well, it is actionable. It can be done about, but it isn't, to me, worth the extra effort. I'd rather the extra effort was put into other aspects of our business. And to have a level that on members of staff that says we've got to get it to 26, but the contract says 50, just strikes me as illogical.
It doesn't affect our staff though, except for monitoring. and recording.
It means, I think, people are spending time trying to persuade the contractor to do better. They're trying to look for ways to improve, and the contractor sat there saying, I don't have to do about this, but I'm keeping you sweet, and okay, the contract's up for renewal, so we'll go along with that.
Well, we're either saying to our contractor, the target is 50 and we punish you if you don't meet that. But they're doing it 40 at the moment. If they're achieving 40 at the moment, we're effectively saying to them, hey, it's okay, you can get worse. They've been doing 40 sort of quite often, haven't they?
Yeah, but it's gone to 47, so what are we saying that because it's now at 47 we want people to run around and do something different? No.
So you're wasting time on it.
Yeah, we're wasting time on it now.
Say that again.
Does anybody have a logical way that'll tie the two things together? Because we've got this logic and it seems to be self-conflicting almost. I don't understand it.
Chairman, if I could just say, I apologise if I'm wasting the committee's time, but I felt that this was a very sensitive matter. It's in red, and it's a very public matter, so that's why I wished you to consider. Thank you.
I think, Chair, maybe then if you recommend that the committee has split observations on the number of, on the target of 40 or 50, and then
we are concerned with the concept of setting a target that is easier to hit than they're actually achieving. I mean, we're bound to be, obviously, that's reasonable, isn't it? But and we certainly don't like the idea of making targets easier just because we can't hit.
If I may, though, I do echo Mary's point on what it looks like, because from the work that the task group did, I think what we found is our target is you know, it's high, it's excessively high, and I think showing it as red is very misleading. So I think that should be, if the committee agrees, should be captured in the observations going forward and in the executive making that decision on the target.
I mean, we've done 37, 47, 40, 47. We can assume that the next quarters it's going to be back down lower again probably, and we might well even beat the 26.
No.
We feel really silly if we're,
Christmas.
you know, if we're saying to them, oh, only put in half the effort or something, don't miss some because you're doing too well.
I doubt the contractors going around saying, oh, I've met my target, I'm under the 50 now, so I'll stop bothering. They don't do that. It's just something that happens because some fault or other. Maybe a different driver has gone around and has missed a turn. They don't miss the miss.
So what it really is a target for us to be, which triggers us to say to our officers, go and have a word with them because the performance has dropped off.
I mean,
that's it. That's all. But they've got that in the contract anyway.
Their target's 50. What ours is probably isn't going to make much difference on their performance, in my opinion. To me, it just looks like 26 looks red, and that's not the case for the service.
Yeah. But if they're doing 37s, we don't want to be turning around and saying to them, oh, you can do worse than you're doing at the moment if you like. I don't care. Members, we've got split between 40 and 50. Can you just tell the executive that, please, because I don't want to spend another minute on it.
Agreed.
Thank you. Under item 9. Now, who's going to do this one for us? There's this Annie Wrighton, I think, possibly. We have air quality updates, or would Victoria's going to introduce us? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. You've got a report in front of you written by Richard Homewood, and I'm just going to summarise the points that we have. It's about our air quality reporting within Waverley. As you know, we've commissioned a detailed investigation into some anomalies that have been identified in historical monitoring and reporting. The outcomes of that investigation by the independent auditor are anticipated shortly. We've already spoken throughout the meeting about the work of the Air Quality Steering Group. We last met on the 22nd of January. The work of the Air Quality Steering Group has been very useful. It's a group of members and officers who are working together to put together measures to address air quality issues across the borough. And we've also spoken very briefly about the local air quality working groups that we're hoping to set up one in Farnham. We've also been very busy putting contracts out to externalise the air quality monitoring and reporting within Waverley. The first contract that we've looked at is actually to review where all the diffusion tubes are throughout the network within Waverley, to actually assess whether they are in the correct position and whether the data that's collected by our analysers is what we should be actually recording. So that's the first contract. And the second one is actually to contract out the delivery and management of the diffusion tubes and the analysers, and to also be able to put together the reporting that's required from our air quality monitoring. So hopefully that externalisation of the monitoring will actually bring some confidence to the council and the public on our air quality data and reports.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Victoria. Do we have any comments from members? Wyatt or I could give a brief update on, or even Councillor Bolton actually could give a brief update from the last meeting which we had, which was only last Monday, wasn't it?
It was, Chairman. I have nothing more to add to what the officer has just said. Excellent summary.
Okay.
I'd just like to comment and say I thought it was a really good meeting. We're getting closer to identifying positive things to actually do. I'd like to congratulate Andrew, new to it, but an excellent chairman.
Thank you, Councillor.
Okay, thank you. Just Morris, sorry, didn't see that.
I read the report with great interest. I mean, and we've had a long battle with air quality, mainly around Farnham, the noisy Farnham residents who complain about all sorts of things. But there's all sorts of other places within the borough that have problems. And I think, for instance, in the middle of Bramley, I'm sure that could be as bad as the borough. A very narrow part, a long time with lots of and all sorts of things happening there. And indeed a pedestrian crossing that hardly works at all. It's much too slow, so people are standing there breathing in all the bad quality air, etc. But the other point that, so I look forward to them checking where the diffusion tubes are. I don't think diffusion tubes actually do enough because they measure over a long period and there'll be spikes that have been reported elsewhere. So there's spikes of poor air quality when there is bad traffic, and then it's all clearly looked at, well, what's the problem? There's no traffic. But I also question, well, not question, but I'd like to understand how we end up with a company like AMEC Foster Wheeler doing a contract. They're a major contractor who actually recently was bought out by the John Wood Group, so it's now no longer AMEC Foster Wheeler, it keeps its name, its chain. I've known the John Wood Group for the last 45 years, maybe longer. I don't know Ian Wood, who actually runs it at the time. They've spread their wings into all sorts of different places. Are we in a situation where we have a Carillion situation where they actually fail? And who is doing the work for Foster Wheeler? Because I doubt, or I may be totally wrong, that they don't actually have the staff within themselves. They will subcontract. And if they subcontract, why don't we go to the subcontractor and get the job done more locally? That's my concern. I just don't understand why we go to such a massive group to award a contract.
I don't think we're going to get a Carillion problem with the size of this contract and work that's involved in it. But I think Victoria would like to perhaps explain again why we went out to private firms as opposed to do it in-house. It was partly because of problems.
I don't know problems going out to private firms.
No. In terms of the tender process, that they put forward the best tender for the contract, and so that's why we chose them.
And how many different companies did we go to?
I can't remember off the top of my head.
Has to be 3, doesn't it?
Do we have a threshold limit? We've got to have so many, so much business.
Depending on the size of the contract, yes. So there would have been a number of contracts.
I'm uncomfortable with it, but never mind.
But in respect of the issue of the sighting of tubes in Bramley, whatever, I mean, we accept that there isn't. It's not an exact science. Measuring air quality is not an exact science, unfortunately. it's very difficult to be consistent with it because you just don't have similar situations in Farnham as to Cranley, to Bramley, to other areas where you can say, well, you know, we've measured the same thing, and the amount that we are killing people in Farnham by not putting in a solution is you know, twice as bad as the number of people we're killing in Bramley or whatever. We're not.
But the Farnham, they do different measurements in Farnham, don't you?
Yes, Farnham.
And that's what I'm getting at.
There is like
different range of measurements in Farnham than you do in Bramley. There's two diffuser tubes, one way out in the sticks, which is unlikely ever to get anything at all, unless the guy comes out of his house and smokes. But in the centre of the village, it's tucked back anyway. But
and we will have the report that actually looks at whether the tubes are considered to be in the right place, or, you know, as to the Farnham one is actually within. The monitoring takes place within the air quality management area, and Godalming has an air quality management area. That within Bramley we have the diffusion tubes, and so they will look at the positions of those as to whether they're considered to be in the best location, or whether actually we will actually move some of the tubes depending on the results of the survey.
I mean, that was one of the things we particularly wanted to look at when we brought this forward a year ago, wasn't it? And you know, can you give us any idea of when we might see things on that? Will the contractors be doing that, or will our staff be doing that?
No, that will be aimed at cost of living, hopefully within the next 3 months.
Because the problem with Farnham, we're talking about, I'm going into a little more detail than perhaps we want to, but with Farnham you have a, where you're trying to improve the situation with regard to traffic. In Bramley we're trying to, with the amount of development going on all around us, we're actually increasing the problem consistently because of the amount of traffic, and no other route able to be taken.
I'm afraid that the situation is, though, that we've got measured exceedances in Godalming and Farnham, which are well established, well known, though the law requires that we take action on that.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have those exceedances, as far as we know, to the same extent as Bramley. Well, they are being measured and it doesn't show them, so unfortunately. I mean, like various areas of Farnham have got tubes which show exceedances, but they're not declared areas because it isn't bad enough. So, across the board. And sometimes you've got a tube out in the sticks because that's picking up background, and it's there deliberately, you know, to pick up what the background is, because you have to have the control. My own concern, obviously, is in respect to Farnham, is with the we've had an air quality action plan for 10 years, since 2008. And that was not one which was going to improve it relied entirely on the pedestrianisation plans at Crest, and they're not going to improve the air quality, they'll have the opposite effect. So what I want to know is, have we got a solution? Because we've seen in our service plans, which are in front of us, that, you know, we've got an acceptance there, we're going to change the air quality action plan and put in place measures. You know, do we have a solution? Because if we don't have a solution, we should be thinking very carefully about what we're doing in the local plan. That's why you've got an air quality action plan in the local plan. And to have one in there, which we've basically decided we're throwing out, isn't really, well, doesn't make a sound plan, does it? That's my concern, but I would like to know, there's no one here, I don't think, who can answer that question for me.
Chairman, if I could refer you to the last sentence on page 95.
Yes, Councillor Roberts.
An absolute obligation on local authorities would not be appropriate, as air pollution regulation and enforcement is not entirely within their control. And that's the legal opinion. Thank you, Chairman.
Absolutely, and we've been looking at this for a year, Councillor Bolton, and it's under sections 84 to 86 of the Environment Act 1995, and it is Surrey County Council, and if Surrey County Council don't pull their finger out and do what is required, and help us put the air quality action plan together, and it's got to be scheduled and funded and genuine, implementable. It doesn't have to be completed because it's a plan. Then we can get on to Surrey. We can get the Secretary of State to get on to Surrey and make them do it. So that's where the law. That's where we've got to use the law to make sure that we get a solution for Farnham, because it's a health issue. And our health minister might help us with it. We hope. Okay. Is there anything more anybody wants to say? Obviously, I think most members know that the monitoring side of things is still being looked at. We can't really go any further down that line at the moment. We're just awaiting news and awaiting reports. But obviously, as soon as we're able to say something, then we will do so. Anybody wish to say anything more on this? Because the recommendation is that members receive the report, welcome proposals for future air quality monitoring and reporting. Simple enough. Members agree?
Agree.
Thank you very much for that report. And now let's move on to the update on environment corporate priorities, which is on page 99. We bring these in front of us because we've got some very large issues going on, and it means that on our agenda there's an opportunity for you to ask, or for us to get updates of how things are going on. At the very least, the residents would like to know from time to time, especially with issues that have been going on for many years. So we've got Local Plan Part 1, Dunsfold, Local Plan Part 2, Neighbourhood Plans, Community Infrastructure Levy, Dunsfold Park. Members, I'm not going to read through all of those. There are in dark, in boldened text are the additions from last time, so you can all see. I'll just give you a minute to skim through those if you wish to, so we can see where we are. So on Local Plan Part 1, members, we're saying we've got the modifications commenced in September and closed on Friday the 20th of October. The inspectors produced questions and then responded to, the council responded. Following consideration of the responses, the inspector will issue a report. Now I'm told that the report has been written, but it's not, Waverley hasn't received it yet, is that correct? Or Waverley has received it and isn't allowed to tell us what it says?
The latter, Chairman. So we have received a draft report from the inspector, and we're fact-checking that at the moment.
I think I read somewhere, and it may just have been a newspaper report that perhaps didn't quite get it completely right. It implied that members of we, so either us as councillors or members of the public, would be able to comment on the inspector's report. Now, obviously, fact-checking by the council is different to us commenting.
Yeah. So once we get the final report from the inspector, it will go onto the website and it'll become a public document.
Okay, and then the next stage in that would be for that to come in front of us as an overview and scrutiny committee in February, March.
There'll be a process that needs to happen between then and it going to full council. And so until we know when we're going to get that final report, we can't map out that process. But it will involve various people, an ONS process, an executive, and then on to council and that will be to adopt the local plan.
Okay. And so, I mean, obviously, I think we're all of us of the same mind that we want to have a local plan adopted, because it will help us to get SIL in to help pay for infrastructure. Yep. What's most important is to make sure that it's sound, that it's not going to be challenged for the housing numbers or whatever. We've got an issue which I've raised before, and I think it's something which we need to make sure we've got the information in front of us when it comes to our ONS, which I assume will be in a month or so's time, and will be in the chamber because it'll be open to, it won't just be an environmental ONS in here. We would assume that that's what we're going to be doing. I think that's the indication we've been given. Neil MacDonald, on the housing numbers, made a response on behalf of CPRE. I think it's probably the biggest issue that we face. I don't know whether there'll be a challenge on it or not, but we want to make sure we've got all our bases covered. Is it possible for us to ensure that we get an officer's response to that? Neil MacDonald was a consultant with DCLG, I think, and he was right in the first place at our EIP, and he sent in another comment saying that we should not really, the 2,500 homes, the inspector's position that we should take that on the unmet need for Woking Borough Council, that there are very good reasons why we wouldn't necessarily need to have to do that. Obviously, as far as residents are concerned, I think, and probably many councillors as well, if that is the case, then we would certainly like to see those numbers reduced, but we don't want to cause any delay. But again, if there's going to be a challenge, that would cause a far greater delay than we would take in sorting the problems out, any problems we've got to sort out. So, would it be possible for us to ask that we know what Waverley's position is on that?
So Chairman, it's the inspector that decides whether our plan is sound or not.
Yes.
And then the council have an option whether to adopt the final local plan or not. And between the inspector's report and it coming before council, there will be the opportunity for members to comment on it and ask questions. So that's the process it will follow.
Absolutely, but if they're going to need to make changes to it, we want to know as soon as possible rather than later.
We can't make changes to it. You can't make changes to the inspector's report.
No.
What the council's choice is, you either adopt it or you don't adopt it, and that's it. So
there's no point in ONS then?
Well, yes, because by the time council happens, like any decision, by the time council happens, members will want to feel informed and have all the information available when they're making that decision. The decision will be whether to adopt the local plan or not. And what the inspector will say, hopefully, is will give their view on whether it's sound or not. And that's the way it will follow through. So there'll be an opportunity between the inspector's report and council being asked to adopt or not adopt for input, comment, and members to be...
So this takes us back full circle to the question of, can we have that knowledge? You've said we need to have, we will need to be informed when it comes around to that, and that's going to be 6 weeks, 8 weeks, or more, whatever, away. Between now and then, members are going to need to know, if the inspector's report says you've got to take these numbers, and we have got a highly respected consultant who's been proved right before and used to be in the system, in the government system, who said that we don't need to take that. If we're questioning, is the inspector right or not, whether we have to take that or not, then, as you say, we need that information before we make the decision and well in advance. So is it possible for us to ask that? Are other members interested, or they just want to roll over and let the inspector do it?
I don't know what the inspector's going to say, because he's got to write his report, well, he's got to send his final report through, and then that will become available for members to look through, and members of the public as well. So, and then between then and the full council, when the council will be asked to adopt or not adopt, as I say, there'll be a period of time. So
absolutely. Other members, how do you feel in respect of, if we have to do things, we want to know about it now, not later. That's my point. We don't want to leave it till we're going into that council chamber and everybody's saying, oh, we've got no option, we've got to vote for it. That's the last thing we want to be told, is we've got no option, we've got to vote for it, because we didn't do something a few weeks ago to sort out some way that we could have got around a problem. So, Mary.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I don't think there's anything we can do. I don't think there's anything in the system that allows us to do anything whilst it's going where it's going. It's in the hands of the inspector. We have to wait for him to come back with his decision. And then, at the end, when it comes to full council can have that debate, and they then decide, council will decide at that point whether they want to adopt the policy or they don't. But I don't think we can stop that process irrespective of what comments are coming back and forwards from outside bodies. So I think we can't do anything about it. I think that's the reality of it.
That's what people told me in 2006, but we stopped that then because it was not big political or anything. It actually lived in local plan, but in 2006 we stopped it. People said you couldn't stop it at that stage if you've got genuine reasons and if it's unsound. So and so it can. It's not as though there is no way to do it. Inspectors are bound to listen to what's put in front of them. But,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. All of us would like more information sooner, if it's possible to get. I think we've been steered by at least one of the officers that it isn't possible to get, or it's not possible to give the level of release. Clearly, it's a fascinating point, but at 25 minutes past 9, it's a level of detail most of us are not able to fully comprehend, or indeed perhaps not get behind. So I wondered if we could ask you on our behalf, since you're the one that seems to have the greatest familiarity, to sort of take it offline and ask whichever officers Graham would recommend know the detail, to see just what's where and can we get something sooner? Because I'm sure we're all happy that
absolutely,
if it can be made available sooner, you're the man to ferret it out.
Happy with that, members?
Yeah. All I was going to say was I'm as unhappy as anybody else about the numbers. We seem to be stuck with them. The question I was going to ask was, during the life of the plan, is there flexibility to change those numbers, for instance, because Woking do a revision of their local plan and
And then
therefore
they need
take
the
on them.
numbers. They have to have the numbers then.
And then we
Correct.
reduce ours because they've now taken them on.
Mm.
I don't know whether it's possible or not, whether it's likely or not. What happens, because government's talking about changing the local plan system somewhat in the next year or two.
Okay, Councillor Byrne, if it has been decided that Waverley can take a certain number, do you think it realistic that we would then be able to turn around and say, get them to say, no, you don't have to take that many? If it's already been decided we can have that, I don't think it's...
I'm talking about working numbers.
Yeah, well, they could bang some more on Woking, but we'll still have to take ours.
Mr. Chairman, as soon as the inspector's report's received, we'll publish that. Then there'll be a period where members can ask questions ahead of members taking a decision around whether to adopt or not. We don't decide whether it's sound or not, the inspector does.
Yeah.
And that's what so the decision by council will be adopt or not adopt, and there'll be time in between those 2 points where members can ask questions.
And I think we've been told, haven't we, that Dunsfold is not going to, the decision isn't going to be made until March. It's now been put back to March because it's going to be after the adoption of the local plan.
Well,
So we know that this is presumably that we can assume that the local plan's coming forward to council in March or late February. And
as soon as we get the inspector's report, Chairman, then the timescale can be worked out after that. But we haven't got the final report yet.
okay. Have we sent back our response to the inspector as yet?
What response, Chairman?
Well, fact checking and comments.
No, we're doing that now.
What's being done?
Yeah, we're doing that
very
now.
hard on that
Yeah.
at the moment.
Yeah,
Okay,
the team are
thanks.
working on that.
Okay, anything else on the local plan? Anybody can move on? Local plan part 2, I don't think we need really to speak on that. There's nothing on that. Depends on LDP1 anyway. Neighbourhood plans. The officers are working with the towns and parishes. Everybody happy with?
Yep.
Okay. Community infrastructure levy.
Can I just speak briefly on that? To say that for those of you that are involved with parishes that are producing neighbourhood plans, clearly Farnham's kind of pass, so it doesn't include me. Could you just check with your parishes that they're happy they get the support they need from Waverley? You know, Waverley are telling us, or the officers are telling us that we're giving lots of support. Are there people on the other side saying, yeah, we're getting lots of good support and we're going to get this job done?
Yes.
Or are they saying, no, never seems to happen, or we're waiting for this, or... and Peter, that's great that you can reply yes immediately. Is that okay?
That's Hazelmere, is it?
I talked about Hazelmere.
Okay, thank you very much. But yes, I've got the members to take that on board.
Yep.
If there are any problems,
we're getting support. It's not as great as, well, it's as much as we need, I think, to be fair. It's checking out what we're saying. We're very clear on what we want to say as a parish, as Brownlee, and we go to the officers to give for their advice as to whether what we're saying is reasonable, in reasonable planning speak,
Good.
and going to get through.
Okay. Thank you. Now, members, number 4 here is on page 101 is community infrastructure levy. You're well aware that at 1 minute to midnight on Friday night the consultation ended, and that's going to be going forward to EIP. I just wondered, we put a lot of comments there in the minutes at the beginning of this, so I think it's page 14 or something like that. Well, first few pages of this heap of documents was everything we put in as a committee about CIL. A few months ago, 3 months ago, perhaps. Are they going to be part of the EIP? I mean, I didn't bother putting in a submission on the assumption that, as a committee, we have put ours in. Those things are going to be considered, I assume.
Well, your comments, this committee's comments, fed through to the executive in December, yes. And so yes, and then. As you say, Chairman, the consultation ended on Friday. We've had 50 responses, and they will be analysed and reported.
But our comments, because of this, what I'm saying really is that there was a system that we're in where there was an executive then after us. Ours went to the executive.
Yes.
Does that mean that our comments don't count anymore? But you know what I mean? Even though there's lots of them here, that's what I really want to know. Or do they go forward automatically? Would we need to push them again when it comes to the EIP or not? I suppose is the question.
Well, the comments of the committee from last time went through to the executive,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the executive don't adopt necessarily everything we say and won't necessarily take that as policy.
So this has got to do another round, got to come through the committee process because we've had the consultation now. So, you know, the consultation, I mean, did we put in here? No, we didn't, did we? There is a, what's the time scale in here? So So over the course of this year, in the next few months, the outcome of the consultation will be reported back. And there's still a decision ultimately for the council to set all this. So it's not finished yet by any means.
No. This is the concern that we've got a different rate, a lower rate being charged in Farnham area, which seriously disadvantages Farnham Town Council, who gets 25% for having a neighbourhood plan in place. Well, you know, it's a lower rate, and other councils aren't working that system, Hart, Runnymede and whatever. They have a land transaction charge system instead, which seems far more sensible and far more compliant. Our scrutiny officer, Alex Sanderson, has very kindly worked very hard to get hold of the Joint Strategic Partnership Board for Thames Place and needs their documentation. We've now got it started going through it, but there's obviously many years of meetings, only 2 or 3 a year. But there are serious concerns in respect of CIL and other issues that arise from that, but I can't bring them up here, obviously. But nevertheless, we will, it's going to happen later in the year anyway, and we don't need to worry now about it.
There's still another process to go through to look at the outcome of the consultation responses.
Okay, thanks. Right, so Dunsfold Park, there's not much on there. We're awaiting the Secretary of State. We don't need any comments on that particularly. The Brightwell scheme, I noted last time we were told that there would be no planning, I think it's in the minutes at the beginning of this paper, that no planning applications were due or whatever, but I'm told that the Joint Strategic, at the JPC, Joint Planning Committee, last week by Crest Nicholson, that could have been the week before, that they were bringing another planning application forward for the construction access and a maybe bridge, BEY. Which means, and I know, from 2012 response from the Environment Agency, they're expecting a planning application to sort out the problems in the access, the dog flood, with the land level clash. Do we know when these are coming forward? Have we got a time frame on them? Because it doesn't really say anything.
Don't know, Chairman, no. I wasn't at that meeting.
Okay, again, that's something I have to take offline. I've got a couple of questions on that, which is, have they got the solutions to these? Because obviously, as far as going forward is concerned, we need to make sure that this either goes forward or gets changed. We don't want it to carry on another 10 years. Okay, members, thanks. We're going to move on. I don't think there's anything for us to agree, just to note the update of noted members. Thank you very much. And we are now on agenda item 11, are we? Yep. Our forward work programme. Should we first of all turn to page 115? That's the executive forward programme, perhaps. That gives us a guide as to what might be going past us. Page 115, members, yeah? Yep. We've got Brightwells up there. That's we follow that each meeting. What else have we got for us?
So coming forward, Chair, on the on our forward programme, not the exact thing, but if you see anything, is play shaping coming forward in March.
We've got Jet.
So we've got play shaping that will be delivered by Kelvin. That will be a presentation on the concept of play shaping and the opportunities it presents for service delivery and Waverley. As you mentioned, Jets. That'll be coming forward to March, and that'll be an update on the civil enforcement activities. And as mentioned earlier on this evening, there'll be an update on Frenching as well. That was an exec decision due in March, I believe. So,
sorry, could you say there's an executive decision due in March? On Frenching?
Sure there is.
So if we want to, would that, okay, March executive, is that the end of March? Yeah, we normally have one at the end of March and then another one early April, don't we, before the... So that will be after our next meeting. So we could look at Frensham on our next agenda, is that right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah, it's down to March. On our agenda.
I think we need to bring that forward, it's a big issue, and we'd like to think that it's an issue of interest to a lot of members of the public. Frenshams a honeypot, isn't it?
So So, Chairman, I don't know what decision that is that on Frenchman. What's that?
So I can't find it on the.
I wasn't aware of an issue coming forward on Frenchman.
Nothing wrong at all.
Are you saying that we might have greater time?
I was just
not
surprised to
necessarily
hear.
coming forward.
I was just surprised to hear there was an item coming forward on Frenchman. I didn't know.
Well, there's an item
bringing
on
it in
forward
the Herald.
programme.
I mean, we would.
Executive forward programme.
Yeah, okay.
What page? What page?
It's on the stone.
On our forward work programme, but I don't see it on the,
There was one on the
executive.
which is why we put it on our forward programme, but I can't seem to see it.
I didn't know what the subject was, other than Frenchman.
Frenchman Visitor Centre.
But that's got council approval. So I just wondered what the decision would be.
There has been
Don't know.
an item on the executive forward programme for a number of months. It's obviously been taken off in the last iteration, but it's transferred over onto the committee work programme.
Yeah, I had mine back to the briefing we had with Calvin, who suggested that we put it on for something to be looking at. But for whatever
There will
reason,
eventually be a planning application, one assumes, and whatever. There must be,
Yeah,
mustn't there?
but that wouldn't be for this.
No, I'm just thinking in time scale.
So is this one we can leave with Alex and Fiona just to see
I mean, it says
what happened to it? Assuming it has gone from an exec, then it might as well go from ONS.
I don't understand what the it was, that was all sorry.
it says in the forward programme
Needed a decision.
to be updated on the current progress of
Oh,
the improvement
updated.
plans, including gaining common land consent from transmissions on the National Trust.
Yes, so we've got the National Trust into the Common Land Consent. Actually, is quite important stuff, and I think we should have an update on that. Good members, do you agree with that? We're not going to spend a meeting on it. It's a half hour at most, I would think, discussion on whatever plans and whatever latest proposals.
You could add it onto that, the last report you just said, Chairman, if it's a matter of interest for the committee as a special project, I guess you could add it onto that. For monitoring, I don't know.
I think we want to put more into it than that, rather than just an update. I mean, there may be some outline plans and that sort of thing, at least some idea for members as to what is being done and what is being proposed, and what the National Trust has apparently now agreed to. It would be nice. There should be a map or a plan or something, shouldn't there, to show us, and maybe some pretty pictures.
Okay.
If
We'll pass that on to Calvin and make sure he's aware of what committee went there.
any items, members, that you want to bring on to next meeting, which is the middle to end of March? I don't have the date in front of me.
Or if you think of anything, just email.
On page 106, I would like to add a column there. Is when contractors dig trenches, then after a reasonable time, they must be enforced with a fine if they don't make good. We've been sitting with the Crown Court.
This is a Crown Court problem, isn't it?
Yes. And it could be happening anywhere.
Did you get a response from an officer before did your?
Well, it's Carillion, and now it's for BT that the problem is that BT must sort it out.
Can we have a brief update on the March meeting?
Yes.
On the Crown Court issue and on are there lessons to be learned from what happened there for other contracts?
Is that okay, officers? We've got somebody who can give us
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's not a Waverley contract, so I think.
It's a Waverley car park.
Exactly. No, sorry,
No,
can I
it's
just
not.
clarify?
It's not on the car park, is it? It's on the alleyway.
contract.
Councillor Bolton, sorry, excuse me.
It's not on the car park, it's the alleyway between the car park and the High Street. Caribbean was not our contractor. Caribbean is a subcontractor to our contractor, and therefore we would have no control over that relationship.
Okay, so there's nothing we can do about it? That sounds it.
Not at the moment, because of dispute between our contractor, BT, and their
I don't presume
subcontractor.
BT have paid Carillion, so it's still their problem. They must
Who
fill the
owns
whole
the land?
We do.
Huh?
Waverley.
Okay, so we put a notice on bid. If it's not removed within 7 days, we will confiscate and charge you £100 per day to withdraw it.
I think the three things you just shared means there's a reason for us to have it explained in an orderly fashion in a meeting rather than...
Fiona, could you ask if we could find the officer who would know what's going on and brave enough to face us?
The battery of that.
I think we've got Place Shaping Visitor Centre, a joint enforcement initiative, and the usual updates.
Read list B, which is the in-depth scrutiny.
Place 107.
Yep. I wonder if we could expand this slightly, please, Alex, to include the other groups that we've kind of caused to happen, so that we won't get muddled up as to what else is happening elsewhere that we've been involved in.
Yeah, we've put that on the other scrutiny tracks for other committees, but yeah, I can add on the groups.
So, you know, the air quality and the planning MRG and the service and budget reviews. I know they're not formally linked to this group, but they're likely things that people might say, well, hang on, what happened about that thing that we discussed 6 months ago? And if it's there, you've got a quick update. But also, I don't think you're quite right in the way you've described the service and budget reviews. So if everybody's happy, I'd like to have a chat with you and mine and update it. That's the bit on page 111, the shaded bit, 13th November service plans review report, where I think this group will be more involved than the narrative currently suggests.
Okay, thank you. Members, I think that's all. We've agreed our work programme for the next meeting. We've done the Sweden Press and Public. I'd just like to thank our officers for making it through to this time. We have, if we hadn't started at 6:30, we'd have had to get do that vote about staying late and stuff. So, members, thank you very much for the hard work, particularly the group, the hard work that you put into that contract, all those meetings.
I absolutely agree.
Really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on, Councillor Bolton. Officers.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. And now, it's time to jump in the cupboard again. Good night.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you.
And the pink paper was brilliant. You didn't have to be on the working party group because it's all there in pink paper.